All right, we got one person in here, so tell your friends about it. Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome to Minds Behind the Music. I'm your host, LA. Today is another open discussion, and I have not checked which Wi-Fi I am using. So if anything cuts out, just bear with me. I don't want to lose you guys. One second, I'm on the wrong router. Sorry about that, guys. I hope I didn't lose anybody. I just lost somebody, but yeah, this is an open discussion. I just want to openly talk about just unpopular opinions, just opinions of stuff. It could be on like deep cut kind of things like songs or bands or artists, just anything of the sort. So keep that in mind. Um, what I will first talk about is the band Greta Van Fleet. I know they get a lot of hate, but I honestly like them, and I'm honestly excited for their new album. And I would hope other people here are. If you're not, that's also okay. Either ways, and I believe that I wanted to go see them back in 2019, but I think they were already sold out by then, and I've never made any definitive plans. That's one of the things. Another is that I'm gonna have some coffee there. Another being that Anthrax. I think I talked about how Anthrax was one of the more obscure Big Four bands, or the most obscure of the Big Four bands. And that being the reason why is, again, I mentioned in the video before, they weren't as popular and their albums weren't as like notable as say Metallica's discography. Like everyone can name something off Metallica's discography. I can't name them. But my personal opinion on that being that Anthrax is probably, I would say Anthrax is better than Metallica, and for for the main reason being that I feel like their consistency that um makes the band shine more rather than Metallica's inconsistencies. Not to say that Metallica's bad. Metallica's had a slew of great albums. I know I know that and he this could lead on to another hot take, but Load by Metallica I think is one of Metallica's best albums, at least since Master of Puppets. I think it's one of their most creative albums. That being said, I'll actually pull up some of Load's albums for you guys. Pull some of that up for you guys. Let's see, I'll pull up the songs. Oh, here we go. I'll Google search it right here. Here we go. We got four more. Eat My Bitch, The House Jack Built, King Nothing. King Nothing. I my favorite thing about King Nothing is definitely the main riff that I hope I don't get blocked for that because I know YouTube's been I don't know how strict they are when it comes to Metallica, but they're they're getting up there. They're getting up there with a lot of bands. I know Guns N' Roses, you can't even play a riff. I know that Rick Beato couldn't even play a riff from Sweet Child of Mine without getting blocked on YouTube, which I think is taking it a little too far. See, Bleeding Me, that's another. Let's see. In order, it's Ain't My Bitch, 2x4. I like 2x4. 2x4 is a good tune. Ain't My Bitch, I love the speed and aggression that it has. 2 by 4 kind of like pulls back on the speed, but it still has that aggression, and I really like that. The house Jack built, that's not really one of my favorites from Load. It's probably, I'm not saying it's a bad song, but it's not one of my favorites. Um Until It Sleeps, that's a good one. That's like more of like a ballad. I think that was more of like a personal song to James Hetfield. And then there's King Nothing as well, which I mentioned. Hero of the Day, I wouldn't say is one of my favorites either. I know it's a lot of other people that like Hero of the Day. They say that it's like one of their best, or that like this album in particular. They say Hero of the Day is one of their favorites. Hero of the Day is not one of my favorites from this album. Bleeding Me, on the other hand, that is definitely that is definitely one of my favorites off that album. Bleeding Me. And what else? There's Poor Twist. Oh, Cure. Cure is a pretty good one. Again, it's a good one, but not one of the top 5 on this album. Poor Twisted Me, not too bad. Wasting My Hate, that's one of my favorites. Wasting My Hate is, I think the riff and the aggression, like the speed and the riff, kind of really brings the aggression of that tune. Mama Said, that's an underrated acoustic by Metallica. I think Metallica shines more from their acoustics. We got one person, one viewer. Let's get those likes up, guys. I definitely want to I definitely want to see what you guys have to say. I'm talking about Load by Metallica cuz as much like a lot of people know me, they know that I'm not that big a fan of Metallica, but I will have to say Load is probably one of my favorite albums by Metallica. Oh, Red Sings Blues. Greg, what's up, man? Yeah, I'll see you Friday, man. I'm just I'm just talking about Metallica, and I'm talking about the Load album. I don't know I don't know how familiar you are with Metallica, but I was saying that this is like a guilty pleasure album of mine cuz I'm one of those people that's like I'm not a big fan of Metallica, but I love their first 3 albums. No, no, this is not their first album. This is no, I don't think it's anywhere near their first album. Let me look it up. That's Load. Load is the 6th album by them. 6th. I thought it was like the 7th or 8th. I couldn't remember. Yeah, Load is their 6th album. Um, but here's Thorn Within, Ronnie, The Outlaw Torn. Again, I don't think it's as good as their first. I don't think it's as good as their first 3 albums, but it's definitely a good album. Like I would recommend listening to it, and I personally think it's their heaviest album to date. And Thorn Within and Ronnie aren't not one of my favorites. I like Ronnie's riff. That's a cool riff. The Outlaw Torn, that is probably my favorite. Um, the Outlaw Torn. This, let me see. Oh, after the Black album, I don't mess with them. Yeah, I can see why. I'm not too big a fan of the Black album, mostly because like I don't know, it's just not one of my uh I don't know, like the music, they're like I would say 50% of that album's really good and the other 50% is just kind of boring and bland to me. After Cliff's death, don't mess with them. Yeah, I've mentioned this before in the Chicago video. I mentioned this that um Cliff Cliff Burton was to Metallica like Terry Kath was to Chicago. I think after Cliff died, Metallica really lost that like edge that they kind of lost something that really made them unique, and it was hard to follow up on that. Not to say that I think that Jason Newsted is an incredibly underrated player, and I feel like they really didn't give him the recognition that he deserved because he came up with some really great lines like My Friend of Misery, the bass line in Outlaw Torn. I love that bass line. It's really simplistic, but it's like it really adds the strength to that song. But Um, I'll put the StreamYard. I'll put the StreamYard down here in case you want to come on to the show and, you know, say anything for a little bit. Master Master Black album is mixed beautifully, but only because the last five albums drowned the bass. Yeah, yeah, the Black album, I would say I am gonna give credit where credit is due. The Black album, it's not like I said, it's not one of my favorite albums by Metallica. Like personally, like in performance quality and in just like overall songwriting, but I think it had the best production from any Metallica album. Definitely had the best production. And the problem with the other Metallica albums that came before it were the one of them had to do with because of Lars. Lars screwed that whole production up because it had they were working with some really professional people. They were working with people that really wanted them to get out there. Like they were working with experienced audio engineers, experienced producers, all that jazz. And that became a mess because of Lars, which was Injustice for All. Lars, there was a. I'll see if I can find that video. I'm gonna check out that video. Let me double check where it is. If I'm gonna go on YouTube real quick and find it. What? Let's see. Very intriguing. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I found it. It was an Loudwire uploaded this video. Hope I don't get taken down. Shout out to Loudwire. They but we just reached 100K, getting to 5K because of you, man. Thanks, man. Honestly, it was a wild ride getting to that, um, getting to 11K or getting to 1.1K, 1100. That was definitely quite a time, and we definitely got a lot more coming here. Um, I'm definitely keep me updated, keep me on the loop on all this, and I'll keep you on the loop here. This today is mostly just an open discussion that I'm doing, seeing who comes on here and see what they have to say. Um, before that, I'm going to show you the Injustice for All video that I found. Let's see how. Here we go. Metallica mixers. This is basically what happened to the bass on Injustice for All.
You know, we get
You
called
can hear
up to
that, right,
do a
man?
Justice for All and understand Metallica was my favorite band. I mean, you know, I wanted to take Injustice for All and make Master Puppets sound like a demo. I mean, that was my goal. And but you know, they wanted a different direction. They wanted more of a garagey direction. So what I can remember is I was working with my partner Mike Barbiero. We get in and start mixing the songs, and Lars had a specific way how he wanted his drums to sound. He would actually bring in pictures of an EQ setup, and so I told Mike Barbiero, I said, Mike, why don't you work with Lars and get the drums the way he likes it? And once you get that, call me in. So they spent a lot of time getting the drum sounds and everything like that. And so I walk in, Lars goes, yeah, I'm happy and everything like that. And I listened to it. I said, this sounds like shit. I hate the sound. So I chased everybody out of the room. I think I had Hetfield in the room. I kind of changed the drum sound to make more what I was hearing. Then we put on the bass, the guitars, everything like that. And what was cool about Jason,
definitely get that rest. You're Joey Bell. Don't mean to be quoting a bunch of people, but you always got to be keen on how much sleep you get, and that goes for everyone else that will watch this or that are currently watching this. Definitely get as much sleep as you possibly can. That's essential.
Jason's parts, they were perfect marriage with Hetfield in the room.
Here we go.
I kind of changed the drum sound to make more what I was hearing. Then we put on the bass, the guitars, everything like that. And what was cool about Jason's parts, they were perfect marriage with Hetfield's rhythm guitars. It was a great marriage. Worked out great. And so I'm getting the mix up and everything like that. Hetfield gives the thumbs up. So we decided to let Lars and everybody come in. So Lars comes in And again, this is a long time ago. I'm trying to make sure I got the right memory here. And he walks in, he listens to it back a couple of seconds. He goes, he shakes his head. He says, "Stop tape." I said, "What's the problem?" What happened to my drum sound? And I think I basically said, "You were serious?" So we had, long story short, we had to get the drum sound the way he wanted. And I'm like, "Oh God, here we go." And he goes, "Okay, now the bass." I said, "Great part. All right, I want you to drop the bass level down in the mix where you barely audibly can hear it." I thought it was a joke. So I did that. And then for they said, "All right, drop it down another 6 to 8 dB." I looked at Hetfield like this. I said, "Is this guy serious?" And Hetfield went like this. Okay. So when that happened, I said, the vision, again, I understand it's their record. It's not my record. But, I had again, I can't, at the end of the day, if the band wants something, regardless of what I think or say, it's their record. They have to have final say. I get that. But I was so pissed off the way this was sounding. I called up my managers and I said, "I love this band, but their direction, I'm not going to be happy with. Find."
And rightfully so. Before I continue this video, oh, we got another person viewing. Let's get those likes up, guys. I really appreciate that. Anyone wants to come on, I just sent the StreamYard link. I'll send it again. Let me make sure that I have the right link. Here we go. The StreamYard is there in case anyone wants to join. Come on and talk and debate. Well, not really debate, but just discuss. I mean, it can be a debate or doesn't really have to be, but come on and enjoy the show.
somebody else to do this record. And at the time, Cliff Bernstein and Peter Mensch were managing the band. They talked us into staying with it and everything like that. And I'm saying to myself, why are you doing this? I didn't realize, obviously, with the Cliff Burton death, I didn't, and the razzing, again, I wasn't around with Newstead when he was getting tormented, I guess. But I guess it was like a college prank thing or whatever. But I didn't understand the politics of that until later.
The hell kind of prank would be like that? That I would you would not catch me. You would not catch me being in a band where they say turn down the bass immediately, turn down the bass all the way. Never, never in a million years. And I think Jason is a trooper for dealing with what he dealt with in Metallica.
And then I was unhappy. I mean, my biggest downfall is I wish we were just jumping from project to project. I wish I would have said, you know what? When they leave, because they were on the Monsters of Rock tour, they would fly in from helicopter to like come and improve mixes during that. I wish I spent a week or two after that just to mix it the way I heard it. At least have that. Because understand that the multi track tapes had about 5 million edits in the multi track, which means you open that tape up today, chances are that whole multi track is shredded. And I wish I would have mixed it the way I heard it. But here's the funny story: when Metallica got elected to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, they flew us in, and so I get there. I think I was working in Canada at the time, so I flew in for the day or something like that into Cleveland. So I'm hanging out with Lars, and Lars comes up to me. "We did have bass in the record, didn't we?" I couldn't believe he said that. He said something that fact. He's with his kids. Yeah. And I says, "You're kidding me. You're absolutely kidding me." And it was kind of funny because I was hanging out with Jimmy Page there too. And I mean, I have so much respect for that band. I mean, I just wish I could have mixed it the way I heard it. That's all. Simple as that. And then when the Black album came out, and I says, okay, I guess they listened a little bit, but it is what it is.
The point or the reason why I just showed that video is because that was just to prove my point or to have an explanation as to why I think the Injustice for All had potential in being a great album production wise, but I think they really badly missed their mark in coming up with that album or in really like mixing that album and having it really sound like a strong record. Because, like you said, Lars put the drums too loud; they were overpowering. You could go on and listen to a Justice for All and actually like listen closely, or you don't really have to listen closely. The drums are pretty much the main thing on the record. They're honestly even overpowering the guitars and the vocals at some points. But it's that was just one of the instances. The reason why the reason why there are 3 albums before that, their their bass was kinda drowned in that, or, um, their bass wasn't really as strong as those albums, was because of their budget in production. So their production wasn't exactly stellar when they first recorded these albums, 'cause they were just starting out. They were a new band, 'cause Metallica formed in '81, I would wanna say, and their first album was in '83, and they were still doing, like, underground bar gigs. They were I think when Ride the Lightning came out, that's when they started, performing at stadiums and arenas and all that, and the Master of Puppets came out, and that's when they really started blowing up and touring, and and that that's how we knew Metallica, and then they tragically lost Cliff. Um, but that's just my honest opinion about Metallica. The reason why I like Load is because yeah, I know they rip on 90s Metallica a lot because, they cut their hair. They had a much different sound than they did on the Black Album or on any album before that. I mean, the Black Album sounded different from the albums they had previously because it had a more traditional heavy metal sound, and it wasn't really focused on being thrash metal as, say, Injustice for All or Master of Puppets, where it was just really focused on that thrash sound. And I think that Load wasn't really focused on that too. But the thing that I like about Load is that they can be heavy without having relying on that thrash sound. And I think all the other big four thrash metal bands um, tried to do that sometime in the 90s and sometime in the 2000s, I think. Like Megadeth tried to have a more traditional heavy metal sound, say with Countdown to Extinction and Euthanasia. I don't remember. I'm gonna look up what the other albums Megadeth had after Euthanasia. I'm pretty sure the one that came after it had a didn't have much of a thrash metal sound either. Cryptic Writings, that's the one that came after. That's the one with She Wolf and Trust. That one didn't have as much uh thrashy kind of sound. And then we have Risk. We have Risk. The the Megadeth album that no one wants to talk about, Risk. I I really wanted to like that album. I did. I know that there was so much hate surrounding it, and I know this is about the whole hot takes and all that, but I could not get into Risk. Risk, it's Megadeth tried to steer away from doing heavy metal on that album, and it really didn't work out in their favor. I don't think they really went back to thrash metal until 2004's The System Has Failed, which I've heard is one of Megadeth's best albums. I haven't really listened to it yet, but I'll probably get around to it one of these days. I think that's one album that I don't think David Ellefson played on that. No, let me see. Jimmy Lee Sloas or Slos, I don't know how that's pronounced. Sloss. It's Sloas. He Okay, so Dave Mustaine was the only member that played on The System Has Failed. I will still give it the benefit of the doubt, and I will still listen to it because that's one of Megadeth's. I've heard that's so far one of Megadeth's best albums, and it's praised by a lot of the people that are big into the Big Four's music. So I'll definitely give that a listen. Uh, that seems like a common theme with, like I was saying before, the whole steering away from thrash metal was a common theme in the 90s for the big four bands. Like Anthrax did that as well. Let me just double check. Uh they kind of did that with Persistence of Time. Um I don't I don't think they were as like steered away from thrash metal like all the other bands did. I know they did a few like rap metal-y kind of stuff in the 80s, I want to say. They did some rap metal, or it was the 90s. I'm not exactly sure, but they kind of they did steer away from doing thrash around there. I think after Joey Belladonna, not that after they lost him, but after he left, um, they started steering away from doing thrash. And I actually have not listened to I haven't listened to the post Joey Belladonna albums, or at least the ones where he wasn't singing on them. I've heard mixed things about him. I've heard that from some people that it's actually good. People should give it a try. He has a very unique voice, like John Bush, I believe his name is. They should give him a try and see how that is. I think he was on the Sound of White Noise, and he was on Stomp 442. I'm not exactly sure what other records he sang on, but that's uh definitely something I got to try out. Got two people here. Hello, hello, whoever else is here. Um I'm just doing some hot takes, or talking about some hot takes. Speaking of different vocalists, there's there's two Iron Maiden albums in which Bruce Dickinson did not sing on. Or actually no, there's four, but the ones after Bruce Dickinson was already in the band and he left, there was only there was two other albums. And those two other albums were the X Factor, or X Factor, I think it was called. No, it's the X Factor and Virtual 11. And the singer on that album was Blaze Bailey. Yeah, Blaze Bailey. He was the singer for the X Factor and Virtual 11. I'm personally not a big fan of Virtual 11 like I am um with the X Factor, and that's because like I'm just not crazy about the songs. The X Factor, I will admit, is actually a very good album. It's I wouldn't say it's one of the best albums that Iron Maiden has put out, but it is definitely better than some of their newer stuff. Like let's see. Let's see. Let's look at the track listing, because I give you guys some insight on that. Before I give you guys insight on that, I would also like to mention that one of the reasons that this album is overlooked is because Bruce Dickinson is not the vocalist on that album, which is understandable because Bruce Dickinson is one of a kind. He is Iron Maiden's vocalist. I will there's no doubting that at all. He is Iron Maiden's vocalist. But I noticed that people just sit there and like they they don't really people look at that album and and they just kind of look at it like this.
Body types and have a range of gear for everyone from teens to seniors. Logistics
You're going to scare the children. Stop.
It they think about it and they're like, "Oh, what if it doesn't sound good? What if Blaze Bailey doesn't do the songs justice like Bruce Dickinson did?" That the only way you can figure that out is to listen to it. And I've listened to it. Yeah, he's not as good as Bruce. I'm not saying that. He's a very good vocalist. I just don't think it fits for Iron Maiden. But that album in particular is not bad. It's actually a really good album. Like, I can name some songs right off the bat that are like some of their best to date. Sign of the Cross. That's the opening. That's the album opener. It's about 11 minutes and 16 seconds. Steve Harris wrote it, so that that's got to be a good one. Because Steve Harris is not only is Steve Harris a magnificent bass player, and he's one of my all-time favorites to date. He is actually a really good songwriter, and Sign of the Cross is one of Iron Maiden's best songs. I could even tell you guys, when I saw Iron Maiden in concert, I saw them during the Legacy of the Beast tour. They uh, they performed Sign of the Cross with Bruce singing it, and oh my god, did they kill it. They they did 2 songs from the Blaze Bayley era, and they absolutely killed it. They killed it. They did it with so much justice, and I could honestly tell you, hearing that live was such an experience. And "Sign of the Cross" is without a doubt one of Iron Maiden's best songs. "Lord of the Flies" is okay. It's again, it's not a bad song, but not one of my favorites. "Man on the Edge," that's a good song. I know Iron Maiden's known for performing that song live, like Bruce Dickinson. Like Bruce Dickinson has sang it, and he sounds pretty good on it. It doesn't really fit his voice because Blaze Bailey's voice is very different from Bruce Dickinson's voice, but it's a very good song. "Fortunes of War," that's another good. That's another favorite of mine. Um, I mostly, I mostly like it for the riffs, and that's about it. There's nothing too flashy about it. Not anything to do with Steve Harris's bass. Nothing with the guitars. It's just it's just like a cool sounding song. It's like it just has riffs. It has pace changes, and that's about it. "Look for the Truth" is another great from that album. It sounds a lot like Children of the Damned from Number of the Beast, and I would honestly say that this like the fact that it reminds me of that while being a new song is pretty good. I know that people are gonna be like, "Well, Iron Maiden's music sounds the same. It, it doesn't. There's no variety," which is fine. That's your opinion. In some cases, yes, I can see that Iron Maiden can be a little bit repetitive with their riffs and their chord changes, but I think it does. I think "Look for the Truth" kind of adds. It sounds like some of their older stuff, but it also sounds like one of their a newer song of theirs. And "Look for the Truth" kind of what I like about "Look for the Truth" is that it plays with the tempo and the like aggression of their sound while knowing when to hold back, knowing when to hold back as well. Hey James, what's up, man?
What's going on, my dude?
What's up? How you doing?
I'm hanging in there, man. How you doing?
Not too bad. I'm just talking about an overlooked Iron Maiden album.
Okay, okay. Which one? Which one we talking about here?
1995's "The X Factor." That was the Iron Maiden album that came out after Bruce Dickinson left, and
Mm-hmm.
then and Blaze Bayley replaced him. I was
All
talking.
right. What is the? I'm not super familiar with most of the Iron Maiden stuff, honestly, as much as I probably feel like I should be. But what is the general consensus? Because I know the voice of Iron Maiden is a pretty key element to their whole sound.
Yeah. I This is an Iron Maiden album that I have trouble talking about with certain people because like even the people that I can talk about Iron Maiden with
Yeah.
will I won't be able to talk to this album about. Like the only person I've really been able to talk to about this album is probably like my one friend Steve from my area and my drummer. And that's about it. Like every other person that I've talked to about Iron Maiden that's also a huge fan of Iron Maiden, like I am, will always say it's like, "Oh, I haven't listened to that album because Bruce Dickinson's not the vocalist on that album." Like I can understand that, which I can because I'm like that with other bands too. Like with
Oh yeah, me too.
like I'm even like that with say Genesis. Like I'm not very familiar with the Collins era,
Mhm.
per se the Peter Gabriel era, and it's which is understandable. It doesn't mean that I wouldn't eventually listen to more Collins era Genesis because there's definitely a lot of great stuff from that. But I would this is an album that I would recommend to people like because it's not one of my top 5 Maiden albums. I will admit that it's not in the top 5, but it's definitely it's definitely good. I think, and I've said this before, it's better than it's honestly better than some of their newer albums. But
Okay, so I mean, what does that have to do with? I mean, is it more of like I forget who you said the replacement vocalist was, but is it kind of a thing where the whole band comes together for a strong, debut performance, or is it more of just they're still kind of they got the energy kicking from albums prior, or what would you say makes it recommendable? Because I feel like when you get new vocalists, I mean, obviously we're talking about Collins and Genesis, like it's not always the case,
mhm,
but there's plenty of times where a new vocalist kind of does sour things a lot.
mhm.
Um, I think the third, the little known third vocalist for Genesis, I couldn't even tell you his name. That's an example of a new singer that just
Um,
not necessarily tanks it, but people just don't respond well.
hmm. I don't. From what I could think of, like I'm not exactly sure. I would say maybe Motley Crue. Like another example that comes to mind is Motley Crue
Hmm.
from their album. I think it was after. Was it after Doctor Strangelove? Or not Doctor Strangelove, Doctor Feelgood. Why did I say Strangelove? I'm thinking of the Stanley Kubrick movie, Doctor Strangelove, Doctor Feelgood. Yeah, I think after Vince Neil left, I know that was met with lukewarm responses and like it had mixed reviews.
Yeah, I feel like again, you're talking a lot of 80s glam that I probably should know a lot more about, but I don't know. I took a deep dive into Prague, and that was that was a good chunk of the last couple of years for me.
That that was honestly the same for me, especially when I was like going to Ramapo when I was going to school.
Hmm.
I I had this huge like progressive rock phase, and I guess for a progressive rock example that I could bring up is Yes, the band Yes. Like
Hmm.
I hate to say it, they're a tribute band at this point. I've mentioned this multiple times on this podcast, but
I agree. It's weird how it's just Steve Howe, right? And he's not
yeah,
even
and
original
Alan White.
band. So it's literally there's zero original members, right?
Yeah, there's the only quote unquote original members, at least from the people that have listened to Yes,
Yeah,
or that people have really like taken the time to listen to Yes, is Alan White and Steve Howe.
Steve Howe. Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but that's not really Yes. Like you're I think the three I'm not to say that they're not great musicians themselves because they are. Alan White is a phenomenal drummer and Steve Howe is one of the best guitarists I've ever
Long
listened
time.
to.
Oh yeah.
But to have those other essential members not be in the band, because I know Chris Squire died. He died from leukemia.
Yeah.
Um, who else? John Anderson's not in the band. He's the vocalist, which is a big part of their sound.
He like comes
Uh,
and goes. It was weird. They brought him back for like a little bit, I believe, but then they dumped him again. I don't know. It's the first time they got rid of him because he was sick, I believe. Um,
yeah,
and then they had was it Benoit David? I think some
yeah. They
guy
had
from
a couple
Canada
members
who
from
was.
Asia. Yeah,
The whole thing. But yeah, that whole band has been let's call it proto Yes for some time now.
they've been to hell and back with lineup changes. Um, uh, it's almost like with Leonard Skinnerd. Like
Hmm.
most of the original members aren't even in the band because one, they dealt with a huge tragedy. Like they most of the members died in a plane crash, and two, it's like um it's again there's only like one original member. It's a lot like Yes. The only difference with Yes is one member died and two of them left. Like Rick Wakeman's not in the band anymore either, and
Hmm.
he was a huge part of their sound at least after Tony K left after the Yes album when they released Fragile. That was a whole like game changer from the Yes album. And I think if I'm comparing it to the X Factor, that could be the same as when Dickinson left. I think that Blaze Bailey, like he's a great vocalist. Blaze Bailey is excellent, but his sound is not for Iron Maiden, I don't think. I think his voice fit the songs that they wrote for that album, and I think those songs are great. I mentioned this before when I saw Iron Maiden in 2019. They performed "Sign of the Cross" and the Klansman from Virtual 11. And when Dickinson sang them, he killed it. Like he like dominated those songs.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how it works that way sometimes, where you get these vocalists that aren't a good fit, but that does not necessarily mean by any stretch that they're not incredibly talented individuals who are deserving of being in that position. Just
Yeah.
it is weird how sometimes it doesn't always work out, but especially Iron Maiden, you're coming from such an influential vocal sound, and you're changing it up. It's like, yeah, that might not necessarily, I would imagine that wouldn't necessarily be met with the most positive reception.
Yeah, because I mean, before that they had Fear of the Dark, which wasn't a great album, but they had some great songs. I think they had some of Iron Maiden's best songs, like including the title track "Fear of the Dark." I think it's also a common live staple. They performed it. They performed it during their last tour, during the Legacy of the Beast tour. They performed "Fear of the Dark," and they, I think, right by like their last two albums before the X Factor weren't necessarily top tier Maiden albums, because No Prayer for the Dying is not really everyone's favorite. It's a lot of people's least favorite albums,
Hmm.
which makes sense. It's not one of their best albums to date. Like it to me personally, I wouldn't say it's my least favorite, but it's not one of my top favorites. Like it's I would say my least favorite Iron Maiden album would have to be The Final Frontier. I know that a lot of people, this is from what I've heard from people that I know, they said that they like The Final Frontier, which is fine, that's their opinion. I just I wasn't as engaged with that album, say, as I would be with Peace of Mind, um, Brave New World, or Power Slave. Like
Hmm.
I wasn't as engaged with it, or even the Book of Souls. That was their most recent album, the Book of Souls. I think it was what is it? The Book of Souls had some great tunes on it, but again, it's not one of their best. I can even name some tunes off of the Book of Souls that I've really enjoyed. There was If Eternity Should Fail, that's a great tune. The Red and the Black, the Book of Souls, the title song, and Empire of the Clouds. Empire of the Clouds is by far is probably my favorite song off that album. It's definitely their most like orchestral or like um sound oriented song, where it isn't just revolving around the band, it's revolving around like what they can do on their records, which is probably their most experimental with their records.
So you mean in terms of like instrumentation and orchestration, but like also production? That's like just general, like what kind of sound can we like really push this to
Yes.
using the resources we have? Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of their best. I think there's definitely a lot that can be uh, said with that one in regards to production. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of experimentation in what you just mentioned.
Hmm.
Um, what is it? And if you need any Iron Maiden recommendations, any album recommendations, I'm your guy.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm thinking we're talking about this now, and I feel very unprepared for this conversation. It's like, nah, I definitely that is a band that for a long time I just haven't really gotten into, but I have a feeling that should be like one of the next big ones. Because even before this conversation, just recently Iron Maiden popped up a couple times. There's a couple songs from like Power Slave on the playlist that I have going on Spotify, and I always think it's like this is one of the bands I have to get into, and it just never works out that way because I don't know. I find it personally for me a very limiting factor, but like this really started when I got into prog, and tell me if you've had the same thing. But because there's so much to unpack in some of that stuff, I will just listen to the same albums over and over and over and over to like dig for more details. It's very
yeah.
it is very limiting in a way, I guess, in terms of finding new music.
Mm. the album that I just dropped, that I just put right here.
Hmm.
Listen to this album all the way through.
Peace of mind.
Yeah, Peace of Mind. It came out. I think it is their fourth studio album.
Okay.
Um, that that is probably my second favorite Iron Maiden album, but I believe me when I tell you there is not a single bad song on that album, or better yet, there's not a single song off of this album that is not good. That is not good.
It's
Like,
one of those ones you listen all the way through.
huh?
You're listening all the way through. You're not skipping any tracks in this one.
Yeah,
That's your plan.
I could even name some of like. I mean, it's hard to say. I don't have one particular favorite song on this album because there are so many greats on it. Like, Where Eagles Dare. That's that's like one of that's like I know everybody that plays drums that loves Iron Maiden. That's like one of their favorite songs to play. Revelations. That's one of the first few Iron Maiden songs that I've learned on the bass. And if you know Flight of Icarus, that's one of
Hmm.
their most well known songs from Iron Maiden. That's from Peace of Mind. And Die with Your Boots On. That's another great one. The Trooper, if you everyone knows The Trooper, that's like
Oh yeah.
Iron Maiden's most popular song. That's
Hmm.
from that's from Peace of Mind. But I and to be honest, like I know people are like not keen on overplayed songs. Like was it like Run to the Hills? As much as I love Iron Maiden and I love The Number of the Beast, I like I don't enjoy that song. Like I think they've played that song to death almost as much as they played The Number of the Beast, like the title song. But I would say the difference between The Number of the Beast and Run to the Hills is there's like I don't know, there's so many more things that I enjoy about The Number of the Beast than I do with Run to the Hills, which again, Run to the Hills is not a bad song. It's
No.
just it's just I don't know, like I'm personally tired of hearing it. I'm
Like how many times can you listen to Stairway to Heaven before everyone calls this is one of the best masterpieces in rock and roll. Yeah, it is. But after the 55th consecutive listen, it loses a little bit of something, at least for a bit. You gotta refresh your ears sometimes, and I feel like a lot of bands suffer from that. I mean, it's the same thing. To bring up Genesis again, it's like
yeah,
you're misunderstanding or you're that's all. Like how many times you listen to that and be like, okay, it's
yeah, or
enough.
The Invisible
Thank you,
Touch
please. Oh God, yeah,
or
don't get me.
Land of Confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like they play a lot of these songs to death, or or say even like there's so many bands that you could name that have like been known for like beating some of their songs to death. Rush did with Tom Sawyer. Yes did with Owner of a Lonely Heart and Roundabout, and it's not even in the prog realm that's guilty of that. Fleetwood Mac.
Oh yeah,
Fleetwood Mac, there's like a
the,
list of songs that you
the
hear on the
whole.
radio all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I will this is again no disrespect to Stevie Nicks, but I cannot listen to Edge of 17 without getting tired of it like instantly. Like it's and this isn't me saying it's a bad song because it's not a bad song. It's a really good song. It's just I hear it so much that I'm just so tired of listening to it.
And you know what's funny? There's a Police song called "Bring On the Night," and
Mhm.
they're related in one way or another. I don't know which one influenced which, but there's like a backing like muted guitar riff. Um, there's the same thing that that begins at just 17. Bring on the Night does the same thing. Um,
Probably
but
because I think
whenever they come up on the playlist, I can tell immediately which one's which, and if it's Edge of 17, I usually hit skip because it's the same thing. Like a song like Bring On the Night, I'm probably not going to hear that outside of the playlist, but Edge of 17, I'll walk into a supermarket or, I'll turn on the radio and the chance of it being, played at some point is pretty high. So it's, whether it's in the background or whatever, it's one of the things you hear and yeah, you get tired of it.
Yeah, I I completely agree with that. And like I said, it's a good song. I don't think it's bad. It's there's when you really like dissect
Same with
that
that
song,
Unpopular is a good song. Yeah, yeah.
it's yeah, it's a good song. And but I would not you would not see me listening to it just because I enjoy it. Like I say, as I would pick a song off of like say if I would like Iron Maiden. Like yeah, there's some overplayed stuff that Iron Maiden's done, like the Trooper, Run to the Hills, the Number of the Beast, and Aces High. But I could honestly say they haven't been as played to death as these songs, and some of them are, like I said, Run to the Hills. But I would say I would openly listen to this song even if like it's overplayed, like the Trooper. And this is just me. I know uh, certain other people might not think the same. I could listen to the Trooper and not want to change it because I'm just like because it hasn't been played to death, at least in my opinion. Or I could there's there's stuff that I like. I I'm not tired of hearing it, and some of it had could do with the fact that it was one of the first Iron Maiden songs that I've learned because it has Steve Harris's signature bass gallop, so that's a big part of the song.
That's one of those tracks I feel like that comes on, uh, in the car or something, and it really does, like you said, the bass gallop. It has this momentum to it that I don't know. I think that it's one of those hallmarks that makes that song kind of recognizable in its
Yeah,
own right. It makes it very hard to, even if you're not in the mood for it, if you leave it on for 15 seconds, all of a sudden you're like, oh no, I can totally, I can jam to this, and then
yeah,
before you know it, you're like rocking out with your buddies in the car or whatever. It's I feel like that specifically is one of those tracks that like will kind of live on and avoid what we're talking about, which is that being overplayed. Like it's one of those ones I feel you could overplay it, but also people won't necessarily get tired of it for that reason. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. I guess it has to do with that energy. Like I not this I wouldn't say that dreary is the right term for certain other overplayed tunes, but it's always a difference in the momentum.
Yeah. And because Trooper is a song that just kind of get you moving a little bit, and this a lot of the
Yeah.
stuff we're talking about, like just 17,
Hmm.
me kind of, but not really, not in the same way.
Yeah, there's a different energy to it.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah. And you were mentioning the Police earlier. I
Yes.
found that I was talking to my drummer about this. Um with the band Rush in the
hmm
80s. I don't know how familiar you are with Rush, but
Fairly, not like 100% like their whole entire catalog, but I'm familiar enough. I think.
if you noticed, I don't know if you ever listened to their album Grace Under Pressure. I think it came out after Signals.
No, funny enough, I think Signals is where my knowledge of the catalog kind of cuts off.
Oh, okay. I think Roll the Bones is where my knowledge of the catalog cuts off. Like, I'm guilty to say because I always brag about how big a fan of Rush I am because I love Geddy Lee and I I love their music. But I noticed that, or he told me that in Grace Under Pressure, and I've went back and listened to it. A lot of the sounds, like with the guitars and just like with the rhythms and all that,
hmm
were very much influenced by the Police. If you ever listened to the Police's last album, I think it was Synchronicity 2.
Synchronicity. Yeah, synchronicity.
Yeah, Synchronicity. Um, they a lot of their sounds you could listen to Synchronicity um and then listen to Grace Under Pressure, and you'll notice that a lot of the guitar sounds and a lot of the rhythm sounds are very similar to each other. And that's because, like, Rush was taking influences from modern bands as well. And the Police was a notable influence on that. Like, was it Distant Early Warning, I think was the name of the song. The guitar chords sound very similar to like a reggae sound, like Andy Summers.
Yeah, just that's that's really cool. I'm definitely I've heard that song before, Distant Early Warning. It's not particularly coming to mind right now. Um, but I absolutely believe that. I actually read last night, and I had no idea that this was the case. I was for whatever reason I was looking into the last the last things that the police really did together. Oh, looking up, they reunited in '86 to do a couple songs that didn't really end up panning out. But
Mhm.
I had no idea they were like the biggest band in the world for like a hot second. Between like Ghost in the Machine and Synchronicity, which are their last two albums, they were like one of the biggest bands in the world, and they actually have like one of their last concerts where they I don't think they opened. I think it was more of like a shared kind of like joint uh concert, but they got on stage and they did something with U2, and they handed something to they handed something to Bono, and it kind of signaled like a handover of the position of being like the biggest band in the world, because this is as U2 was coming up.
Yeah.
So like on that caliber, so I absolutely believe that Rush would take influence from that. And that's cool that they would that's cool that they would do that.
Yeah, I've always known about the Police, but I guess I wasn't too uh I wasn't too informed on their popularity, or on, how big of a band they were, like when they started, cuz they started in the late 70s and they broke up in the mid 80s.
Yeah, very short-lived group. And they went through this whole transition from like this punk group, which a lot of punk groups did in the '70s, like this post-punk thing where they adopted reggae. And
Mhm.
honestly, that's one of my favorite groups by far. I had the privilege to see them at their last ever concert in Madison Square Garden, which was just
Yeah,
absolutely
that's incredible.
absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I think I have Outlandos d'Amour on
Hmm.
vinyl, cuz I got it from my dad for Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another phenomenal album.
Yeah, I agree. Like, So Lonely and Can't So Lonely and Roxanne, those are classics, and Can't Stand Losing You, that's another great one. I think So
Uh,
So
yeah, yeah.
Lonely was probably one of my favorite songs off that album.
Oh yeah, that's that whole like them leaning really hard into like the it's not quite punk. It's kind of like the beginning, I guess, of like post. It's like I guess back then what you would consider like a pop punk kind of
Mhm.
sound.
Yeah.
Uh, and I like how I, there's just a lot of cool experimentation on album. Like the last song on the album is called Masoko Tenga or Masoko Tango. Um, and Sting is essentially just kind of like singing, not quite scat singing, but doing like these nonsense lyrics for the whole thing. And there's all kinds of like stuff with him tapping on the bass to get different sounds. And Stuart Copeland comes and just kind of yells at one point just because he can. It's just it's fun. I really dig that kind of experimentation.
Yeah. I What was I gonna say? Um I I could definitely see that, because whenever a band really tries out for a new sound in the late 70s and early 80s, it ends up being one of the biggest things the world has ever known. Like, say, the Cars, like
Hmm.
they were one of the first new wave bands, or one of the first new wave bands to gain popularity, like same as Devo, but the Cars had a sound to themselves that were it was both punk influence and just like pop influence as well, like, and bluesy. It was also pretty
Oh
bluesy, if
yeah.
you ever um which I really started listening to their first album, their debut album, and it's definitely like there's not like any other music I've listened to, like, even if I count any other new wave bands that I've listened to. The
I was gonna.
Cars was definitely quite a sound.
Oh yeah, and I was gonna say to that end, there's a lot of bands from that time, and the Cars are one of them, where the evolution of that kind of sound as things go on, because punk was kind of moving in a different direction already. like by like the mid to later 70s. I think one of the best examples is Simple Minds. Don't You Forget About Me. I mean, that's the classic that everybody knows. They started off as like this brutal punk band where they released tracks about like getting raped on the London Underground and all this like incredibly crazy, just like really gnarly, just down and dirty punk that was about all these really like
Messed up stuff.
there's really taboo topics. Yeah, and how you go from that to "Don't You Forget About Me" and tracks like "All the Things That She Said." I just it's
That's
kind of it's amazing in a way because the evolution, how it just and it's hard to pin out. It's like is that would you consider that selling out? Is it more like just that's where music was moving is in this in a more easy, less aggressive direction. I don't know. It's a lot of bands from that era tend to do that, but I think they're the most extreme example that I at least can think of.
Yeah, that sounds more like Alice Cooper territory when you think of those song themes. 'Cause,
Oh yeah, like seriously aggressive stuff that I remember I just pulled it up for the first time just to kind of say, oh, where did this band begin? And I really was like, oh my god, this is the same group. Like these are the same guys that did Breakfast Club.
yeah,
Like hard to believe.
that's that's actually how I was when I listened to Genesis, like the prog Genesis, before I knew anything about them, because how I knew Genesis was from them as a trio band with Phil
Mhm.
Collins, Mike Rutherford, and Tony Banks. Like
Me
I just
too. My mom loves them, and that's all I heard in the car a lot of the time. And
my
when
mom
I
loved them too. So
oh, and when I was digging through their back catalog, and I want to say it was probably Selling England by the Pound,
mm,
or maybe a little bit before that, like Foxtrot or something. But I was looking for some
those
like
great
really
albums.
oh yeah, I was looking for uh some really like deep cut prog stuff to go into because I was just copping off like a big Yes binge, and I had no idea that this band had like this really long history that kind of brought them to this point, and I was like, oh my god, this is like revolutionary. These guys rock.
Yeah, I didn't know Genesis was that old either. I knew they started in the 70s. I just didn't know they were like in that realm, that same realm as Yes and King Crimson and Death Row Toll. Like, and I remember like because um I think you said you were on a Yes binge right before
Oh
that.
yeah, real hard. Oh yeah.
I was on a Neil Young binge before that. So going from Neil Young to Genesis was quite a paradigm shift for me. And
I'm
uh
sure.
yeah, and I first listened to Selling England by the Pound, or it was it was Selling England by the Pound. It was either Selling England by the Pound or the main title track to The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
I gotta tell you, Lamb is probably my favorite album ever of anything. So
Lamb is definitely up there in my I would say it's probably my fourth or third favorite because my first is Selling England, like undoubtedly Selling England by the Pound.
just an amazing album in its own right. For Lamb, I think for Prague, uh, for me, and I guess I think this comes from the Yes stuff. Like listening to a song like "Close to the Edge," um,
Mhm.
it
Oh,
kind of
Close
is
to the
like
Edge.
oh, it's kind of like you take away your own meaning from it in a way between the musical elements and that incredible organ solo that takes up half the track, and just how everything comes together. Um, for me, and I mean, this started. I was a senior in high school, and it was like you really. I was just like, wow, they really do. They leave the door wide open for you to really take what you want out of this listening experience. And when I heard Lamb for the first time, it's like the ridiculous ambiguity of the whole overarching storyline and everything. it ends up being like in my brain like a choose your own adventure because it is like every single time you listen to that, there's like something different to take away because it probably has some kind of actual meaning. But I mean, there you can Google it. There's an entire website dedicated to discussing lamb and what it means, and
Oh, really?
it's been around since the '90s. And at least last time I checked, the conclusion was we don't really know what it's about. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of out there.
Only thing I know about the lamb is it's about a Puerto Rican guy who moves to New York and like just figures out his life, and that's pretty much it. Like I know there's a bunch of crazy stuff that happens on the song,
Yeah.
and there's definitely a
Hmm.
lot of things to take to that they leave for people's interpretation, but because it's a rock opera, I believe, or people consider
Oh,
it to be a rock opera, like Quadrophenia, which I think came out the year before.
oh yeah. And it's. I mean, it's a really absurdist type of deal, which I mean personally I've taken it away to just it's an album that I feel like really is about self growth and growing into adulthood.
Mhm.
Um, but there's like 1,000 different like little meanings in every song which you can kind of grab and pull and what does this element mean and what is this like there's a lot. It's a very loaded album and it almost feels kind of purposeful that way.
Yeah. Um, I had to give a big paradigm shift, but
Hmm.
I kind of wanted to I could bring up a more modern band, I guess,
Yeah,
cuz I think that a lot of these artists and acts have back then were the strong like blues and jazz influenced, and
yeah.
I mentioned earlier that I think I'm gonna open up Pandora's box saying this. You are you familiar with the band Greta Van Fleet?
I am familiar with Greta Van Fleet. Yeah.
I I always feel like I'm gonna get hate for this, but I don't think they're that bad. I actually really like them.
I was gonna say you probably are gonna get hate for saying that.
Yeah.
um, so my feelings on Greta Van Fleet are very complicated. Um, they're definitely a talented group. I think where they kind of lost me a little bit was when they said stop comparing us to Led Zeppelin because it was very clear to me immediately. It's like, well, that's what you're going for, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's like there's no way that that's not what you're going for. I haven't listened to their newest album, but supposedly I've seen some of the reviews and it says they completely kind of ditched that sound or that they've
Yeah.
developed their own, which good for them. That's I think that they carry on like a hard blues kind of thing. I think they're definitely talented and able to do it. I just couldn't really make heads or tails of the don't make Zeppelin comparisons because it's like that. Uh, I mean,
Yeah.
it was when people give them crap for being they're like a clone of Zeppelin. I mean, I don't necessarily think that's an
Yeah.
invalid way of looking at them, right? I wouldn't say it's totally fair to them, but it's not like
It's not.
it's not like that's pulled out of the air. Like there's validity to that.
Yeah. And it happens because, every band has its influences. I know people like to say, "Oh, I don't have influences." I don't like to admit that I have influences, which is fair. It's you don't want people to think of you as the musicians that you enjoyed and that, you sub and I know that sometimes people's playing can be more subconscious and like for me, um I didn't notice recently that my bass playing was very reminiscent of Geezer Butler's from Black Sabbath because
Mm.
whenever I performed at a gig, people are like, "Oh, your band sounds like Black Sabbath. You sound like Geezer Butler, like from the way you play," which I guess uh it's not a totally inaccurate analogy because when I was in high school, I had this huge Black Sabbath phase
Hmm.
and I would just consistently learn Black Sabbath. I learned a lot of Black Sabbath songs. I learned almost all of the whole Paranoid album. I've learned a decent amount of their first album, and I believe I learned Into the Void, which is one of my favorite all time favorite Black Sabbath songs.
Mm. I get the same exact thing for Chris Squire because when I was learning bass in high school, that was when my Yes phase was really beginning, right? And it's a combination of Chris Squire and Adam Clayton from U2. Because when I first started playing bass, I was kind of coming off my U2 phase, getting into my Yes phase, because I wanted stuff that was more complicated to learn. But I get what you're saying with that, because you hear that and somebody tells you that, and your first instinct is, no, I don't. This is my
Yeah.
sound. But fuck your sound, bro. That's, you really want to bring it back. It's like there's probably some upright bass player from like from the early jazz era that probably plays very similar to the way that you do if they were playing blues and rock. Like it. Music is just. I
It's
feel like
like
music is an art of emulating.
it's almost like a family tree, and this
Oh yeah.
this is how I think this is how most people would react when they're like compared to another artist or another band.
What, no warning? I said no second chance.
And that's like another band. Like I don't know if like I've I've noticed this at least since releasing my band's EP, or at least
Hmm.
since releasing music by my band Progress Avenue. Uh, we've been compared to Rush a decent amount, to Rush and Tool, which again, it's not like I'm saying, "Oh, I don't want to be compared to that. Don't compare me to that." But I can, because I can see why people uh would compare me to that. It's because like it's just I was probably subconsciously playing like Geddy Lee and Justin Chancellor, because I was like when I came back to Ramapo, or when I came back to the US from England, I I was listening to Tool, Yes, and Rush again. I was listening to Rush,
Mm.
and I could see how that impacted my playing, and I could see how like we sounded together, because my drummer is a huge Neil Peart fan, and I'm a huge Geddy Lee fan, and I don't deny that.
And
I love Geddy Lee. I think
let me
he's
tell you, I think that's
genius.
interesting because now that you say it, I didn't really put that together, but now that you say it specifically, um, the one of the songs off of I forget the title. Excuse me. It's been a hot minute. I did listen to Avenue of Progress, right?
Yeah, the
That's
instrumental.
uh yes. That, and there's the other song
Is it Skyline of Love or Scream?
Skyline of Love. That's what it is. Um, reminded me a lot of like earlier Rush stuff.
Yeah.
Like definitely like the earlier Rush stuff. Um, and to that end, I'm working on an EP right now that after listening back to it a couple of times, I'm starting to realize it's like that guitar playing sounds a lot like if Andy Summers and The Edge got together and merged styles. It's really interesting how that just kind of comes together. Like there's not really any like I didn't set out to say, oh, I'm gonna make something that sounds like this, and I'm sure you say, well, we're gonna, I'm working with these guys, we're gonna make our own sound. Then it's just interesting. It doesn't really necessarily work out that way. I mean, it does in its own right because you are making your own sound, but your influence, uh, you can't hide them. I don't think you can hide them.
Yeah, I really I can honestly say I can't. Like I think one of the first segments I made on this podcast was like guessing certain musicians' influences
Hmm.
from like just seeing them play. And one of I think the first musician that I did for this video was Frank Bello from Anthrax. And I already named like 2 or 3 influences from him. I know one of them Steve Harris, and I think he's openly admitted that Steve Harris is one of his favorite bassists, and Jerry Only from the Misfits, because I noticed their music's very. I don't know how familiar with Anthrax you are, but they're very punk
Not
oriented.
very, but
Yeah, they're a very
yeah.
punk oriented band.
Similar to is it Eddie Van Halen? said that he talked about the influence of some of the guitar tapping that that Steve Hackett did on some of the earlier Genesis stuff as very influential to later, tapping techniques that Eddie Van Halen would further, would further go on to for like, Eruption and things like that.
Yeah.
But can't you can't hide it, and it really is funny how I see music is kind of a community in its own right in that way because there's always going to be I don't know if you're always going to have like nobody's going to come from no influence. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that, I don't believe that exists. And if anybody tries to claim that they're an uninfluenced, completely independent act, I don't really believe that.
I don't believe that either. And I I think the whole point that I would want to make about Greta Van Fleet is yeah,
Yeah.
they have influences. I'm not saying like, I have nothing but absolute respect for the band. They're really cool dudes and they're really great musicians. But influences should never be denied. Like you could say like I get that people like to say that they don't have influences, which is fine. You could describe it in any way, shape or form that you would want to. But there's always been a start with that, and I don't think people should rip on Greta Van Fleet because they sounded like Led Zeppelin on their EP, which is From the Fires.
No, they should riff on them because they fiercely deny that there's Led Zeppelin influence there, or that they're not trying to be Led Zeppelin. And it's like just if you've seen the live performances and kind of the whole package, it's like give it up, man. You're not fooling anybody, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Uh, for them to say, oh, well, we're a Zeppelin influenced band that we're trying to do like that Zeppelin style of rock and blues. I think that's wonderful. That's great. I would love to see a comeback of that, a new wave of that, but don't pretend that doesn't apply to you or that doesn't exist because that I don't even know. It's silly. It just makes you look stupid. Isn't the right word, but it's unfortunate. I guess I don't know how to describe it. It's too bad that they chose to go about it that way.
Yeah, I will admit that they could have went about it a little better.
Mhm.
I'm not too sure how true this is, but I maybe they retracted that statement and they're probably like, yeah, we enjoy Led Zeppelin, we like Led Zeppelin, but what I can respect out of them is that, when their first album came around, they started really shaping their sound and they started saying like, hey, we're not Led Zeppelin, we're Greta Van Fleet. And
Mhm.
which it happens like hell. Even Led Zeppelin themselves, like have like Led Zeppelin's first album, 90 or good like 60% of that album is just covers,
Yep. Just
or like
listen to the artist. Yep.
yeah, and their influences. I think they were a rock band whose influences were blatant. Led Zeppelin, they
Mhm.
were their influences were blatant, and maybe Greta Van Fleet was trying to be more like the band, like the groups that influenced Led Zeppelin, or just really try to go back to the roots of rock and roll. And we got another person in there. Let's keep uh for anyone else there, let's keep those likes up. You got another person. I was just saying, but what were you gonna say?
Uh oh, just in regards to Greta Van Fleet, just or no, I'm sorry, to Led Zeppelin their influences. I was gonna say that another group that their first album, I don't know. I think this is the only one, but I think it's really interesting. The Doors, Alabama song,
Mhm.
which is a cover of like I don't know exactly what the background of it is, but it's like this old song from this. It's like an old folkish song from this play that inherently sounds like Russian or Eastern European.
Mhm.
And they just made their own version of it and cover it and slap it on there. And I think it actually it's more bold to make a cover of, especially in the case of that, but even in Zeppelin, taking all those blues standards and covering them, it's like, to take something that's already established and to try to make it your own brand, that's bold. I think
Yeah.
that's a strong statement. And
I
to
mean,
bring it back to Greta Van Fleet, it's like, yeah, I think it's more bold to take the road of, yeah, we're covering stuff than to deny it.
yeah. I know the when they first started performing live, they were actually really notable for their like classic blues covers because they covered "Evil," the song by Howling Wolf that Cactus covered in 1971 or 70. I think it was either 70 or
Zeppelin?
71. No, Greta Van Fleet.
Okay.
They
Um,
they they covered "Evil" by I think it was more like Cactus's version, but
mhm.
it was good, and I think that
Oh,
that's definitely something. I remember when I first performed with my band Progress Avenue, we did covers. It was we never wrote a song. I don't think we ever wrote a song yet. We didn't write a song together yet, and that's just kind of how most bands start. They write covers, and we performed covers. I think I'm trying to remember what specific covers we did. The first one was um Only the Children by Toto. I think it was from Toto's what was the seventh one? The one that came out in 1988.
I couldn't tell you. But,
Yeah, I'm not very familiar with Toto either, so
hmm,
I think my drummer would be able to tell me because he's a huge Toto fan.
hmm, interesting.
We did Only the Children by Toto, uh, Day of the Eagle by Robin Trower, which is a popular cover that a lot of people enjoy that a lot of people enjoyed that we did. Let's see, Day of the Eagle by Robin Trower, um, Paranoid by Black Sabbath,
Hmm.
and The Spirit of Radio by Rush. Those were those I remember. I believe it was in that order as well, in that exact order. It was Only the Children by Toto, Day of the Eagle by Robin Trower, Paranoid by Black Sabbath, and The Spirit of Radio by Rush.
And I'm sure that got people's attention, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember the. Oh, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, yeah, no, that sounds like a lineup that would get people's attention, especially with stuff like Spirit of the Radio. We're talking before about stuff that's played on the radio often and stuff that people hear often.
Yeah. Um, I from what I've seen, the guy that booked us that gig, he really loved hearing us play Day of the Eagle,
Hmm.
and I think some other people that were in the crowd, they were like, "Yeah, we really like that Day of the Eagle cover," and we just kept on adding it to our repertoire. I think there was one
Yeah.
gig that we didn't perform it, but um, we just kept it on our repertoire because it was like a lot of people enjoyed hearing us play it.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I was briefly, but for a little bit, I was a bass player in a ska band, and
Oh,
we had like saxist and trumpet players and everything, and we did a cover of Santeria that that people really lit up and responded to it very positively, and it was just hell of a lot easier than writing your own song.
yeah. And quite honestly, like I know this is probably this might be a sin, which is I don't know if this could be counted as another hot take, another musical hot take, but performing a cover live really does hit different. Like
In what way?
I think in the sense that like it's a different song, but you're doing all you can to like make it your sound.
Yeah,
And
I absolutely agree. Um, when I was in that band, I was fortunate enough to have the liberty to when I told you I was doing a lot of Chris Squire stuff, right? So at that point, I was kind of also in my high school's jazz band, so we did a lot of walking lines and stuff. But by that point, I was kind of like all over the neck,
mm,
and I had the liberty to take Santeria, and my bandmates just gave me the chords. They're like, "Yeah, just do whatever you want with it." and I took it for a walk, and it was fun. It was genuinely, it was a good time, and people liked it, and it was yeah. And there's between that and the adding the sax and the trumps to it, it was just yeah. I know exactly what you're saying. It's a very different experience, and I think that it's almost I think there's something about it from both the performer and the listener. Because the performer, it's like you're giving it your all to make it yours, and from the listener, it's like, look at these people taking this track that is beloved and that I like, and putting their spin on it. That's awesome.
Yeah. Uh, Another instance that I could also name, like, has how you felt about covering Santeria. Um, that the my band once covered War Pigs by Black Sabbath.
Oof,
We
that
did
sounds
we Yeah, we did the whole song, like both like every guitar solo, each verse, like we did the whole song from beginning to end. And I sang and I played bass on it at the same time.
ooh.
And I could honestly say, like, like playing that song live, which this was for like a little talent event in I think for my bandmates, because they live in a separate town from mine. It's ways
Uh-huh.
from mine. and
Look,
and we did this song, and the way we did this song was just like, it felt like it was us. It felt like like the way that we did it, and just kind of like all the energy that we put into this song, um just everything was where it needed to be. And I think that was the real highlight of covering that song or performing that song. And I know that, like, I kind of figured out how to work around singing it and playing bass at the same time, which um I know to a lot of people, they've said that singing and playing bass can be a challenge, especially if it's like uh depending on the song and depending on like what you cover.
I can't sing and play anything. Like that's for me. I'm trying to learn how to sing and play guitar at the same time because I'm assuming that singing and playing bass kind of would be easier once I learn that. It has been so incredibly difficult to. You think to do those two things together wouldn't be that much of a task, but no, that's it's very difficult.
Oh,
So for you to be able to do that, that's very that's impressive.
here's another hot take. I find singing and playing guitar a lot easier than singing and playing bass.
I don't get that. That's you and our mutual friend Paul Machado says the same thing. He goes, "Oh, I can play and sing, but if I just do one or the other, it's not as good." I don't understand that. I really don't. Like
Yeah,
I've tried so hard to build it, it doesn't click for me. At least it hasn't yet.
yeah, like cuz like I think the reason why people find it easier to sing and play guitar is because, like, the melody or the notes that you're hitting while you're singing are in the chord. Like, it's in the chord that you strum, so it's kind of like, you could kind of get used to the rhythm. And when you're doing the melodic changes, you also, like, when you're doing the melodic changes with the chords, it's kind of like synchronization. But with the bass, you're just doing like that one note, depending on how you're playing it. If you're just doing like the one note and like you're doing some movements right then and there.
See, and that's why it's so hard for me because it's the exact opposite of what you just said. For me, it's the rhythmic part that kills it every time. I can sing fine and I could play the same notes and the melody. I'm fine with that, but the minute the rhythm gets changed up or something happens, like, and it's both on bass and guitar, like these fingers will immediately start, getting tripped up and not knowing what to do. Or if I'm strumming something, it just grinds to a halt. Uh, because if I'm singing in like a different, like a melody has a different kind of rhythm to it versus just strumming a guitar, or fucking strings on a bass. And for whatever reason, that just so far, I've been playing for almost 10 years now.
Oh, really?
Just nope, big no.
Yeah, I think you've actually been playing longer than I have. I've only been playing for 7 years.
It's I don't know. I don't put I mean, I took some time off playing. I don't know. I think it's one of those things where I, I'm hopeful that I can still make it work, but I think that for some people it just does not click, and I'm starting to get worried that maybe for me it just won't click. That's okay, I guess.
Nah, I
Do other
before
stuff.
before I will give you a little piece of advice, but before that, do you know the Rush song "Time Stands Still"? Or actually, no. I'll give you another instance of super like master level singing and playing bass. "The Trees" by Rush.
I don't, but um, I mean, I know enough about Geddy Lee and the bass lines that man whips out to understand that I've seen enough of him to know that he's on like another plane of existence in some of these tracks that he's able to do it on. I have no idea. I have no idea how that's even possible.
Yeah, like there are two albums, the two Rush albums. Let's see, is "Farewell to Kings" and "Hemispheres." "Farewell to Kings"
Mhm.
came out in '77. "Hemispheres" came out in '78. Which I would also recommend to you because I know you're a huge fan of Yes, and I think if you'd really like Yes, you would like this album. Now, I'm not gonna guarantee that you would like this album, but I'm just saying, like,
Oh yeah,
if you like
probably.
Yes, yeah, like if you like Yes, I think you would like these two albums. But the Trees, when I hear it like it played, like when I hear like the beginning, like there is unrest in the forest, there is trouble. Like he just does the root notes, and then he just does all this craziness like in between that, and then like while he's playing, like he's like in synchronization, like doing all these movements, and I'm just thinking like, yeah, I can learn this too, right? Yeah,
Or I'll just die.
it's it's
Yeah,
madness.
pretty much.
And my suggestion to you, if you really want like one of the key components that a lot of people say to playing bass and singing, learn learn either the lyrics first or the bass line first and then the lyrics. Like it, either one could work. I think with War Pigs I learned the lyrics first and then I learned the bass line. And but that would be my advice to you, and that's
Hmm.
common form of that's a popular way that people could like learn play the bass and sing. I I still have difficulties with that as well. Like I'm trying to learn Anthem by Rush from Fly By Night, the first album that they
Yeah.
had Neil Peart on. Like I've learned the bass line, but I have not learned the lyrics to the whole song, and that's going to be a whole different level, a whole different ball game to say the least.
I mean, I'll keep pushing. I'm confident that I'll be able to do it sooner than
Yeah,
later at some point. But
just
I have
gotta
tried so far. Keep pushing.
just gotta motivate yourself. I think another good example, like this is not like not to say that Paul McCartney isn't like top tier when it comes to his playing, but
hmm
definitely check out some of the Beatles catalog in for some from the earlier stuff, because the way that Paul plays the bass fits with like singing the melody of the song. Like 8 days a week, the "Ooh, I need your love, babe." Like
hmm
that song has a pretty simple rhythm and simple bass line. Like not simple, but simple enough to learn it and sing it at the same time. Um
That's a good suggestion, actually. That song in particular. That's good. I actually think I will go and do that.
all right. Another really really easy song to learn and sing, like sing and play at the same time, is "Get Back" from Let It Be.
hmm
Their single "Get Back" with Billy Preston. Like I think all that Paul McCartney does is root notes, and I think he either just does root notes and octaves, and that's about it. And he sings over them. And honestly, like I would suggest, I would suggest, or this would be really up to you on that, would be to either learn the bass line first, which is mostly just root notes and octaves, or learn the lyrics first, which uh, either one is still gonna either one is fine, and it's all up to you on that. I guess I would say, since I you're still like in that learning process, I would say learn the lyrics first and then learn the bass line. But again, it's up to you on how you approach that.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. Thank you. I'm just sitting here trying to think of how well I know the lyrics. I've heard that song 1,000 times, but yeah, Jojo was a man who thought he was a woman, something something. So not that well.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's not like a super long song. Let me see how long it is. It's only like at most like 3 or 4
2 minutes,
minutes.
2:15, something like that.
Let me see. Get back. Get back. Oh, let me see. I'm just looking. Yeah, it's about like 3 minutes, a little over 3 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
but
not a long song. There's only like 2 or 3 verses. I think there's only 2 verses.
yeah, yeah. No, that sounds about right. Yeah, that doesn't sound like too tough of a learning curve. That's good advice.
All right. Yeah.
Uh, so I wanted to ask you. So we're talking about hot takes on this show.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, this is something that on Facebook I've come across quite a number of times in these boomer guitar groups, and I had no idea that it was such a hotly contentious thing. And I kind of just want to know, it's not really a take; it's more of a question because I think it's a question that either answer you give is just you're going to get blasted for it. Um, ECDC after Bon Scott, good band, yes or no?
Um. Yes, I would say at least for Back in Black. Back in Black did have some good songs. I did. I did enjoy them, but I don't think that like I think like Highway to Hell and Back in Black was kind of like their peak. I feel like after that
Okay.
they kind of like, and to be honest, like I'm gonna be honest with you, nobody's I can't find anyone that can name any of their albums after Back in Black besides the one that Thunderstruck was on. Like I personally can't. I don't know
Uh,
anyone else that can.
I don't think I can either. Was Hell's Bells on its own album? Was that a title track? No, right?
Hell's Bells.
It's on Highway to Hell, right?
Oh, Highway to Hell. No, that was on Hell's Bells was on, well, Highway to Hell. Are you thinking Highway to Hell or Hell's Bells?
I'm thinking Hell's Bells. What was that
That
on?
that was on Back in Black, I believe.
Okay, so there you go. So they released a new track in 2020.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, and I mean, for given all the stuff that's with that lineup that everything's happened to that group, I mean, they sound really good still, but it sounds exactly like all the other stuff from the post Bon Scott era, like exactly the same, like carbon copy. Like I said, an AI Back in Black and asked it to spit out a song, and it spit it out for me. And I gave it a listen, and a Rolling Stone article linked it through Facebook. So there's a ton of people that were going, "Oh, they still got it, they still rock." But then there was another, good chunk of people who were like, "Well, this is just the same thing over and over again." And yeah, this argument really emerged of, is this good?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I had a hard time answering it. Me personally, I didn't think so in the way that it's like this is continuously the same thing over and over again. But I also get where a certain crowd who just wants something to put on the radio while they drive to work or while they're on their boat fishing or something you know, might be into that. They get,
Yeah.
I don't
I
know. Yeah.
um I personally I've like I don't know, I could never really get into ACDC.
I
So,
could,
but I don't know. I would kind of be on. I would kind of be on the. I would kind of pick the latter as well, like because I've listened to a lot of their stuff, and it's very much like the same thing over and over again. At least since Back in Black, it's been very monotonous.
yeah, and I think there's something to that. That just, what is it? Malcolm Young is the guitarist, correct? Uh,
Angus Young. I think
Ang-
Malcolm Young died.
uh, Angus Young, he had a stroke, didn't he? Didn't he have to like reteach himself how to play guitar?
I think so.
So I don't know. For me, it was just this sound blasphemous in some circles, I'm sure, but like it's disappointing to see that this man retaught himself how to play guitar after having a stroke, which is incredible. I mean,
Yeah,
that's an
that's
incredible
impressive.
feat. And they just went back to playing the same thing, to making the same thing. Not that it isn't kind of impressive. The fact that they still have it after all this time, that's cool.
Hmm.
Uh, but I'd be remiss if I didn't also say that it was a bit underwhelming, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, didn't Def Leppard go in? I don't remember if they went in and re-recorded some of their old stuff, or if they just started performing live recently or something. But the whole thing was everybody saying, "Oh, Def Leppard still sounds exactly the same. They still got it," and it's like that's cool. Um,
Hmm.
but Def Leppard's not also. I don't believe they're putting out new music and trying to push it, as something
Yeah.
new and the same product. But I think that's what I'm getting at the ACDC thing. It's I mean, if you listen to it, I don't even remember the name of the song. It is verbatim like the same product that they put out with um, Back in Black. Um, it's just I don't know. I think it's a little bit bizarre. I think just
Yeah.
to try to push it out and say that it's something new, and all these people defend it and say, "Oh, this is great." Well, it's all right. It's just it's what it is.
That kind of reminds me of another uh topic that could be considered a hot take as well.
Hmm.
You were talking about like, uh Angus Young suffering a stroke, and um what is it? That reminds me of Lou Graham. You remember the original vocalist from Foreigner?
Hmm.
He I think he suffered a brain tumor in the 90s, and that really messed him up. That messed up his singing voice, which I would imagine that's one of the worst things that could ever happen to someone, especially a singer of that stature.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Probably like the worst possible thing that could happen.
yeah, and I like I think that he's still in the process of like, getting his voice back, or like see trying to, get that energy back for his singing voice. See, from what it said, he had a type of brain tumor called craniopharyngioma. I'm not going to pronounce that.
Big word.
It's it affected his pituitary gland,
Yeah.
and um which apparently that caused him to gain weight, and that affected his stamina and his voice,
Hmm.
which I think is very sad to hear, because it affected his voice. And Lou Graham, he was, as a singer, he's no joke whatsoever.
No, not at all.
Like I believe he had a 4-octave range as well. Like when he was in Foreigner, I believe his range was about 4 octaves.
I'm trying to think if there's ever a song where he like directly displays that ability. I don't think anything that I know of, because again, I'm not like 100% like super familiar with everything in and out of their catalog. But no, I believe it. I mean, that man was let's see, very 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 powerful singer.
Yeah, I think what is it? Their first album, I've listened to plenty of songs off that, and I've listened to a lot of their big hits in the 80s, and
Hmm.
I've from actually hearing his voice, like that dude was no joke. He was a force to be reckoned with. And
Oh, I have a friend who just very anti-foreigner, just does not like them. Like any they're in the car together one time, and I think Blue Morning Blue Day came on. He was like, "I'm gonna jump out of the car right now. I swear to God, turn that off right now." But I remember that was one of the big arguments I made to him. I was like, do you not hear that really, him, but just the whole group? I said, do you hear what this whole ensemble is doing right now?
Yeah.
Like, this is a band with a very unique sound. So we were talking before about like, kind of signature sounds. That's definitely, they got one.
Yeah.
And it's a big part of it.
That argument I could even make with Queen. Like I'm not a huge fan of them. I'll admit that I'm not a diehard Queen fan. They
I
have
wouldn't say myself either.
they have stuff that I love. Like they have some songs that I just absolutely love, but I will give credit where credit is due. On a technical level, they are actually a really talented band. They're
Oh,
really
yeah.
talented musicians. Like I know people are like, "Oh, they're overrated. They're overrated. They're overrated. I don't really like how they sound," which is fair. That's your opinion. But I'm going to give credit where credit is due and say that, there's a reason they were like one of the biggest bands in the world. Like Brian May was an exceptional guitarist. Freddie Mercury is one of the greatest vocalists that ever lived. And John Deacon has excellent like his feel and technique is better than a lot of other bass players out there. And it's like no other. And Roger Taylor, I will admit that like he's not. I know from drummers that I know, they'll say that, oh, he's not like the greatest drummer of all time, but he's still a pretty damn good drummer. He's a really competent one at that.
Every band is gonna have that, right? Like Pink Floyd's Nick Mason, I think, was that the same way, where it's like, oh, Nick Mason, he's not nothing particularly special, but it's like, man carried the band. He knew how to play for what he was playing for, and he knew,
Yeah,
how to drive it. It's sometimes you don't
and
need
the
to be
same
like
could be said
the
with
greatest
Ringo
of all.
Starr.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what you hear so many people say about Ringo. Especially there was an interview that I want to say it was either Guitar Center or Fender or it really makes sense for Fender, probably Ludwig or something, did with Dave Grohl.
Mm-hmm.
Concerning how has Ringo Starr influenced you, and Dave Grohl sat down. He's like, oh, the minimalism in terms of he didn't need much, but he like made it work. So you don't need to be, as much as I love Neil Peart or the drummer from Dave Matthews Band, whose name is kind of slipping my mind right now. It's incredible what these people do. Sometimes you don't need 45 different cymbals with different, different pitches and stuff, and 35 toms surrounding you, and like a 3/6. You can do it, and it sounds awesome, and it's an amazing performance, and it takes an incredible amount of talent. But there's nothing wrong with just the basics in terms of drumming. But what was I say about Queen? Because you were talking about some people don't. I get that. Queen. That Brian May guitar sound a little wonky at times. It's unique because it's a guitar that is custom built, and it's not for everybody. And same as the whole everything the band is doing is like I said, it's experimental, and I think that's why I like it a lot, because they're trying a lot of new things that weren't necessarily attempted previously, or at least on a popular scale. But no, I think I get why people that wouldn't necessarily like them, but you can't deny that they're an incredibly talented group of performers, especially Freddie Mercury and Brian May.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? And to backtrack with the whole hot take was what I was talking about with Lou Gramm. Like a lot of people, I noticed that some people with singers and with certain singers and certain musicians that like I listen to, and I think that like I've noticed, like, for example, say you see Peter Cetera, the original vocalist of Chicago, um perform his songs like he performs, say, uh If You Leave Me Now from Chicago 10.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't sing it exactly the same as he does because he doesn't have that range. And people will go and comment and say like, "Oh, he still has it. He still got it. He can still sing good." What is your honest opinion on that kind of like response or that kind of reaction?
Complicated. Um, I think there's kind of two. I think there's kind of that can get kind of complicated, right? Because some people just lose the range. I mean, you can't help that getting into age. And of that, I would say he still got it, and he still got something.
Mhm.
Uh, it though, I mean, sometimes you lose a little bit of it as you age because your vocal cords change and maybe you go through some health problems. That's fine, but
Mhm.
um, that's not it. But there's other groups like U2, even from their early onset, whenever they play live, have a step down every single time. And supposedly that started off as a way for Bono to kind of not exert himself, hitting like all the high notes when he was live. Um, but I don't know how truthful. Maybe that just started off that way, and they like the sound, or I don't know what the case was. But U2, you can check out since I think one of the earliest live albums that's not a bootleg that they have is Live Under a Blood Red Sky at Red Rocks, and everything's a half step down. Um,
Mhm.
Billy Joel, I believe, is another example where I don't think Billy Joel's range has. I could be wrong about this. I don't believe his range has changed too much, but he brings everything down. I don't know if it's a half a step or more, but he brings everything down because the whole idea, especially I guess with the Madison Square Garden residency, is he doesn't want to,
Yeah, exert himself.
yeet out his voice. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. In that way, it's like maybe he still has it. That's a complex thing. I think. I don't. What do you think about it?
I agree with you. It's very complicated. I think that in some cases, yeah, like people most of the time that I've seen people do it is because, the range is not as strong as it used to be, or they just think that, it'll sound heavier that way.
Hmm.
Um, for example, I did a Bon Jovi. I did a recent review of 2019 Rock in Rio of him performing "Living on a Prayer," and it was a half step down, and I did not like it. I thought that he sounded just absolutely abhorrent. I think that vocally he
Really?
was not
Oof.
there, and this isn't even to rip on him. Like I'm not purposely trying to rip on him. Like it's just that performance was not good, and I think 90% of that was because he was losing his range. And from what I've seen, it's from what I've heard, it's because he exerted himself too much in the 80s and 90s to a point where it like ended up really damaging him. And that's why I always put this hashtag right here. Take care of yourselves, vocalists. Take care of yourself, vocalists, because no one else is gonna be able to do it. Like
I
you
mean,
gotta take care of yourself.
think about the way that we kind of look at things now, right? Like
Mhm.
when I was at Ramapo and you went to Ramapo as well, Ramapo College. I worked at the music studio, and whenever I had vocalists in the booth, I would virtually harass them every like 10, 15 minutes. Like, you need water? You sure? You're good? Like, you should go get a drink of water anyway.
Mhm.
Um, because it's like, stay hydrated. Um, but also, I would find myself, not even really like I sing, but it's not like anything like groundbreaking. Like, I don't hit highs or anything like that. It's not really uh, that's not really my kind of lane to be in. But for the vocalists that do, I would harass them once and be like, well, tea and honey. You need tea and honey to make sure that this is not going anywhere because I mean, think about the scale of a band like Bon Jovi. How John Bon Jovi's up there and he's singing for God knows how many shows in a tour all across the world for God knows how many days in a given year. And it's like, already overexerting himself. Is he really taking care of his voice back then? Probably not.
Mhm.
Um, it's a
Yeah.
shame. And I guess it kind of asks that question too. It's like, do they still have it? It's like, I don't know. Bon Jovi completely obliterated his voice by taking it as far as it could go before giving out. And the fact
Yeah.
that he's still singing, does he still have it?
And to what you said is leads on to my next motto that I have, the hashtag drink your water. You gotta do it, man. if you want to keep singing well, like into your you want to keep singing well into your 30s and 40s, you got to drink your water, man. That's my advice to them, to all those vocalists out there.
Oh yeah, I toured with not really toured, more just kind of went up and down the Jersey Shore with this guy who was for a summer who was just kind of a traveling, just perform covers and stuff like that. And that was every time he talked about him singing, he says, "This is the secret." And pulls out a bottle of Poland Spring. He's like, "This is it." Because
Yeah.
this is all you need. All
That's
you need
all
to
there is to it.
is just make sure this down the gullet every song. That's
Yeah, I always fill this up whenever whenever I go to practice with my band. I always fill this up, and whenever I have a recording session and I'm going to record vocals, I fill this up. I make sure that I make sure that I don't eat anything that would restrict it too. Like um like I've mentioned this before, uh a lot of people or a lot of vocalists cut out a lot of harmful things that would affect them while they're performing, or they cut out like food entirely, like dairy and like just
yeah,
stuff that would completely hurt their voices, which is understandable and more power to them for being able to do that. But my biggest suggestion in doing that is, if you're going to have something that would be harmful for your voice, I would suggest having it after you perform. Well, if it's harmful for, like, not that harmful for your voice, but would restrict you from like singing up to par to the way you'd want to, I would suggest having it after you perform, after like you're completely done for the night or done for whatever, whenever you do it. That's always been
yeah.
my suggestion.
To that end, I'll tell you, whenever I have whenever I plan on doing like a couple of vocal recordings like the next day, um, always because I get really bad acid reflux in the morning if I eat too much, garbage at night. Uh, always seltzer water before bed and in the morning to kind of really, you know, settle everything down. And
Clean
then
everything out.
no coffee in the morning, only tea
Hmm. Yeah.
because it's it's once you get something like reflux that tenses everything up, and then
And
that's
it hurts getting that too. Like it hurts your throat, like physically, like it's painful, like because it sticks on your throat, and it's just like it's an uncomfortable feeling.
yeah. Something I learned during this most recent bout of recording I was doing is I had this really weird chronic bout of like not so bad tonsillitis that lasted for about a month, and I
Mhm.
had one of the mornings my throat was really bad, and I tried, and I was like 15 minutes in, like one of the worst decisions I've ever made. Oh man, it was so painful. Don't even let it get to that point.
And I remember uh I remember back in I think it was last February, I got really sick right before I was supposed to perform. I got really sick like the week before I was supposed to perform with my band. We were performing at this bar. Um, I got really sick. I had an upper respiratory infection, and then after that, I had a um, strange wave of acid reflux hit me like the night before, like not the
Mm-hmm.
night before I performed, but like the night before I started recovering, and that really set me back a bit. One thing I would never, ever, ever suggest you do before you perform vocally: don't ever have throat lozenges, or at least don't have the ones that have menthol in them, because you will be seriously hurting your voice. Like if you want,
Really, I
you
didn't know
cannot.
that.
Yeah, I I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say. I learned that the hard way. I had throat lozenges right before I went on to perform, and it almost killed my voice. And I I don't know if you remember my song "Scream It to the Sky." That's
Oh
where I
yeah.
like really hit the high notes.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
And you had no feel in any of this, right?
Yeah, it was like I could not hit the. It's like it didn't. My body did not want me to hit the notes. And as soon as I finished performing, I was like this.
Too bad that didn't kill me.
It was a freaking nightmare, dude. Uh,
Oh man, yeah, no, that doesn't sound fun. That's good to know.
yeah, like
That's
never.
crazy. I would not have guessed that.
Uh, when I believe the guy recorded us because he has this camera. The guy that held the gig, he recorded us. I remember every time I hear every time I hear myself sing, I could hear the voice cracking. I could hear me struggling to hit the notes.
Like, no, turn that off, please. I don't want to hear any more of it.
Yeah, every time I hear that, I hear my voice in that recording. I'm just like this.
Jesus Christ, my ears!
Every time. And it's just you don't that's just my advice to you. If you're ever performing and you know you're sick, don't ever have throat lozenges, at least not the throat lozenges with menthol, because you're just shooting yourself in the foot doing that. Just have tea, have like hot water with lemon, not too hot, but have like warm water with lemon, or have like have tea with honey, or just have honey, or like numerous types of tea. I think Paul Rogers wrote mentioned this in an interview. He said one way that he keeps his voice in tip-top shape is drink as much tea. Drink tea. I would suggest if you're going to perform and you're going to bring tea, bring water too, because tea is a diuretic, and which means that like you'll feel the need to pee a lot more, and when you pee, you'll get dehydrated, and so whenever you're done, just whenever you bring tea, bring water as well, because that happens. And
Dehydrate, rehydrate. Oh,
yeah, pretty much. Dehydrate, rehydrate.
That's a good motto, I think, to have.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna write that as a banner. I'll put hashtag dehydrate, rehydrate.
I can't even take credit for that. There's a guitar center near me where I was walking in, and one of the guys had like this. This is an important note too. He had like a 16-ounce coffee, and he had like a 50-ounce like enormous jug of water. Where one of his coworkers was like, What is that?" And he goes, "Well, for I think it's like every 1 ounce of like, at least for coffee. I don't know how it pertains to tea because the amount of caffeine is different, but for every like 1 ounce, you want to replicate 2 ounces of water for the diuretic effect." And he goes, "You got to dehydrate." And he holds up a little coffee cup and rehydrate, and he struggles to put up like this giant 50-ounce thing of water. But that stuck with me because I think that's absolutely, especially for vocal work, it's like that's very true. Because I've done the thing where I try to load up on coffee to get vocals done in the morning. That doesn't work very well either.
Yeah, I usually like whenever I have coffee, it's usually like decaf, or like it's a small amount of it compared to my enormous jug of water that I have, my enormous bottle of water. Like it's usually smaller compared to that amount.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a caffeine fiend, so I usually get like the dark roast, the Cuban stuff with the very high caffeine content, like because I need that little extra jolt in the morning. But yeah, I usually carry around a pretty obscene amount. Like I don't do this as much recently, or you never saw me do this at Ramapo because I never wanted to get judged for it. But before Ramapo, when I went to Brookdale Community College, every single time I went there, I carried one of those 1 gallon jugs of water, and I was one of those guys. It's so important. It's imperative that, especially to do vocals, you gotta.
Yeah, you always gotta bring water. I never realized how important water was to you vocally, or to people vocally, until now. Like until like I started going to college, like even at CCM, like when I first started at County College Morris, I went to what do you call it? I recorded. I didn't realize like the importance of drinking water, and up until I started doing vocal recording sessions, and I started getting water bottles and just like getting ready for all that, because I didn't think it would help me, but it really helps a lot, and it helps a lot physically too.
Like I said, every vocalist I ever had, I would banish them every 15 minutes. I'd be like, you're on a roll. That's great. Go get water. You need it."
Yeah, that was like Paul with the tuning. Whenever we're done like with a take, he's like, "Okay, before we do another take, make sure that's in tune. Make sure you're in tune. Like you gotta always keep an eye out for the little things, because they can they could be a big effect on your recording.
I'm embarrassed to say, but there's been plenty of times where I will do like 11, 12 takes of something, and I'll finally get like a guitar solo or something, and I'll be like, this is it. I love this. And then I stop to think, and I'm like, did I tune the guitar? And then I strum it. Like, no, I didn't. And that's 12 takes down the drain.
Yeah,
Right there. That's an hour of my time just completely wasted.
that's me with the bass. Like I will record a bass line. I'll record like 4 or 5 takes of that bass line, and then I realize, oh wait, I'm not in tune. Like I'll check the bass strings, and I'm like, oh no.
And then that's the worst. When I record bass, I think the worst is when I'm playing something, and for my ear personally, at least for the stuff I've recorded recently, because it's not like bass heavy. It's like not. I like a very fat sounding bass because again, Chris Squire and the Rickenbacker thing, Geddy Lee and the Rickenbacker thing too. But that's like my dream bass, right? I love that fat, obnoxious sound. But for what I'm recording, it's very subtle. So it would be like I'd get halfway through a song and then maybe I'd start playing some stuff on the E string and I'd be like, that sounds a little bit weird. And then I'll play it back a few times and I'll pluck the string and I'll be like, oh, that sounds like garbage. Because it's sitting in my extremely cold room and then I put the heater on and now it's all hot in here and the strings are all getting out of whack because, temperature changes and all that. And you think after a certain amount of time that you would start remembering, but in my case, not really.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that too. With I was gonna say there was there was a TikTok that I did. I have a TikTok where I sometimes upload covers and stuff, and I did this segment called Guess the Song, and I like try to do. I was doing the intro to Wrathchild by Iron Maiden, and I was wondering, like, why is the sound out of tune? I look at my bass. I check out my bass after I record it and I uploaded it because I thought, oh, it sounds okay. I check out my bass again and I see that like the A string and the E string are like painfully out of tune from each other, and it's like no wonder why this sounds so weird to me because it's like painfully out of tune.
Oh yeah. Why does this sound so bad? Oh, because it is. Yeah.
I'm like, why does it sound like it's out of tune?
Uh-huh. Or at least I don't know, for me, I have a very cheap guitar that I've been really dragging my feet on getting a new Telecaster for quite a while. But some of the tuning machines are like really bad. So it is like I have to retune after every single take. And if I don't, I have a lot of stuff flushed out with chorus, so it's not terrible. It kind of works, but then if I leave it for too long, it really does just gradually devolve. And it's such a slow process that if I'm playing for like an hour or two, maybe I'll notice it sounds a little off, but with the chorus and everything, I won't necessarily pick up on it right away. And then I'll go for lunch or something and come back and I'll be like, wow, this is terrible. What happened? And it's like, oh, because B is like practically on A and G is practically on F. That's cool. Thanks, $80 guitar.
Yeah. What was the last thing you said?
You're talking about water, guitar tuning. You're talking about a hot take, right? With Queen or something?
Yeah, no. Oh no, I was saying I was just asking what the last thing that you said was.
I devolved into that guitar conversation, and I really can't remember, honestly. I'm sorry.
Nah, you're fine. But what we were talking about was just like how people were saying certain vocalists still got it, or like defending certain performances. Like
you were saying the Bon Jovi one you didn't like a lot, and I was saying that if it's because he pushed his voice to the limit, I can kind of understand why certain people, especially of a certain age or persuasion, would say, "Oh, he still got it." That's kind of complicated. I mean, does he still relative? I guess put this way: relative to what he was able to do. No, but that's And that's every artist, right? I mean, you grow and your vocal cords change, and that's just
Yeah,
kind of that. You got music is a young man's game.
yeah.
I think there's
You
a lot of
also
truth to that.
you also got to play your cards right, because if you really want to sing well into your 40s, 50s, and 60s, you're definitely gonna have to take to account what certain artists, what other artists do, and what you can do to make sure your voice isn't like in bad shape. Like Paul Rogers from Free and Bad Company and The Firm,
Hmm.
he was like he's like in his early 70s and he still has his range. Like he could still sing as good as he did, say, on the first Bad Company record. I could even I could even go so far to say as he could still sing as good as he did on Fire and Water by Free.
It's a great album. I gotta say, there are some cases like that which I think are very surprising, right? Mick Jagger, I think, is one of them.
Okay,
Uh,
Joey Belladonna is another one.
I mean, I don't know what her cigarette usage was like, but didn't Mick Jagger like smoke a bunch? I mean, he quit.
Yeah.
I feel like I remember that he quit decently early on when he realized that his range might get affected. But
Mhm.
there are certain vocalists that just seem to magically make it through, and it's kind of
Yeah.
very surprising. I think Robert Plant's another example. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, that he seems like a man who partied probably pretty hard, but I mean, it's not even his most. I don't even know if it's his most recent. It was going back a couple years, but he released an album
Mhm.
uh, with his band, the Sensational Space Shifters, and he sounded phenomenal. It's
Yeah. I
like
know
nothing.
he I know he changes some of the tunings on a few Led Zeppelin tracks. I think from the 2008 performance, I think it was the Celebration Day live album.
Yeah. Hmm.
I don't know if that had to do with his singing voice or just because he liked the way it sounded.
I you have to imagine it probably has something to do with the singing voice because it's some of those highs that Robert Plant hit. I mean, that's kind of one of those things he's like renowned for was how high up he could
Yeah.
really drag his range to. But I feel like that inherently, like we're talking about vocalists who, like Bon Jovi, who how many times can you sing the same songs and hit the same high notes and just really
Hmm.
slam it before your vocal cords are like, all right, well, I'm done.
Yeah. They're like, all
Uh,
right, I'm gonna head out.
so I'm gonna head out. Thanks, appreciate it though, bud. And
Yeah.
then you're just left with what you got for the rest of your career.
Another
Yeah.
instance that I would like to bring up is Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden. I
Hmm.
don't know if you ever say I actually saw them in concert, which I brought up earlier. Um, I I think that Bruce Dickinson has still got it. Like he has his exact same range that he had when he first joined Iron Maiden, when he was on the Number of the Beast album. Like he hits the same notes. He can say they don't need to change the tunings, and he still puts on a hell of a performance. Like his vocal his vocal cords are like like every time I hear him sing, it's like his vocal cords do this.
Yeah, boy!
It's- I
I okay,
sorry, no, go ahead.
I can tell you another example that like blew my mind. I was at a Mets game in like 2015, and Styx was performing. Um, and I at first they almost weren't because there was like a thunderstorm that came through, and it was like this really bizarre set of circumstances. Where eventually they came on stage like 11 o'clock, and like half the stadium had left, and it was like, no, it Styx. I think it's kind of a hit or miss thing anyway. And then I started like getting thoughts in my mind like, oh, if everyone's leaving,
Yeah, you're
they
doing bad for the
mustn't be
business.
that good. But then they came on, and I don't know the guy, the front man's name. I don't know much about Styx. He came on, rocked, dude. Like they were like they had this like the synthesizer that was on the swivel that they were spinning around, and this vocalist who probably was in his late 50s was just bouncing all over the place and hitting all these high notes as if it was like sounds like the album. It was just like it was off of Pieces of Eight, the Big Sticks album that most of their hits are on.
Yeah, like I think Renegade is on that album.
Um, and it was really mind blowing because it's like, huh, Sticks. Like who would have thought? It just, I guess it does come down to self care, but I guess a certain amount of it also does kind of come down to just kind of your luck of the draw sometimes. You know,
Yeah.
like some people just like Phil Collins, which we both like Genesis a lot.
Hmm.
You know, it's sad. He is a man who does it, but he kind of rolls with that. You know.
Yeah. I think I think that more props to him for being able to still like go out there and perform, albeit it's not in his prime. He doesn't have his range. He doesn't, I don't think he could play drums anymore either.
Uh, the fact that he went out and called it the what is it, the Not Dead Yet tour
Hmm.
or something like that. Um, one, that's brass balls right there. But two, I mean, he talks about it. He talks about, oh, how he drank and how alcohol ruined his health, and how he's out there giving it what he can because it's what he's got and it's what he wants to do. And I just, yeah, but like you said, more props to him. It's incredible. And he's not trying to hide anything. You know, like we're talking about John Bon Jovi to kind of get back to the top of it, where you said, yeah, he lowered everything and it just, you didn't like it. You thought it didn't sound very good. And, you know, you can't, I don't think you could be coy about that or sly about that.
Yeah.
Like, some, to try to lower something like a hit, especially a song that's like that well known, and just try to pass it off as a, oh, well, I'm singing it a half step down, but it's still the same song. It's like,
Yeah.
hey,
And
you lose something.
the problem the problem that I had with that song wasn't even just it wasn't even the fact that it was a half step down. It was the fact that he was still struggling to hit the notes, and he like everything that like kind of made the song unique, or any that really, cuz that song was known for Bon Jovi singing along with, the guitar as well, but it was one of the biggest instances was Bon Jovi singing in that song. And for him to uh perform it live the way he did on his saw on his on in that performance in particular was just really disappointing to see, because I'll tell you, one of the biggest issues was he was flat. Like I'm not even gonna beat around the
Oh,
bush with that. He was flat, and you could tell, like, and this might have to do because like his voice was tired. He like, he this would I would assume this is like one of the last songs that plays at the end, because most bands and most like
that's an encore
artists,
song.
yeah, it's like an encore song, or it's like a last song on the set list kind of thing, because they always play their most popular songs at the end of their set lists. And with Bon Jovi, uh like I get that he's tired, but it just seemed like the difference was like everyone this was everyone this was the entire band's energy, like throughout that performance, uh including Phil X, the current guitarist that they had, and all the other members of the band. This was the energy, and this was Bon Jovi's energy. There was a noticeable difference, and it caused a lot of friction, I think, with the band. And I for me to really for them to say he still got it, and to give a performance like that, uh, I I can't say I agree with that. I don't think he still got it. I think that he needed a lot of work with his voice, and it was just that performance was not good. I'm
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Albeit his way that he's singing now. Oh, and sorry if I missed you, the goddamn bacon. We're just talking about hot takes, like just like opinions and all that other stuff. It's an open discussion that we've been doing, and I'm just mostly talking about, but right now I'm just talking about like if certain when certain people comment, oh, they still got it. Oh, he could still sing. Oh, it's set. Like it's kind of like it's almost like sugarcoating it in certain performances like this. and I I think that um I think that with Bon Jovi, it's kind of hard to sugarcoat that. It's like
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm not saying like and this I'm not saying like his voice sucks now. He sounds terrible because I've seen recent performances of him. Like he performed "Living on a Prayer." I think one of the recent. I think he did it for a radio show on like last year in 2020. Um, he performed recently for their show, and honestly, it didn't sound that bad. Like it didn't sound like obviously he didn't have his range. He didn't sound as good as he did in the 80s and in the 90s, but he didn't sound bad.
It was a rough night.
Huh?
It was a rough night. The what you're talking about, the performance
Yeah.
was flat. Um, I think it's interesting too to kind of think about, we're coming at this from the perspective of like you and I are both musicians,
Mhm.
um, and it's like, do you remember what your ear was like before you started getting into music more, becoming a musician? Because I don't.
Do I
Um,
remember what?
what your ear was like before you became a musician? Like how you perceived music before you started playing an instrument?
I never paid close attention to the way that like instruments like complemented each other, and I never took to account like the way like a certain key signature of a song and the way like the chord changes. I never really took to account all the things that made uh a song stand out in particular, I guess.
So, could you imagine going back to not knowing anything that you know about music, not knowing how to play any instruments, just looking at it from a completely outside basic perspective of, oh, this is a song that sounds good. Could you imagine that? Like, could you perceive in your mind, this is what I would perceive music as if I did not know or I was not involved in music in the way that I am?
With this performance in particular with Living on a Prayer.
Oh, with anything.
Um Yes and no. I think in some cases I would probably say like, "Oh, this doesn't sound that good. I don't really like it." But
Yeah.
I don't think I would be as harsh and like and as like brutally honest about these performances. Like I wouldn't point out the exact problem with the performance in general like I would here because I wouldn't be as knowledgeable say as I wouldn't have known much about the like I wouldn't know much about like, pitch and just the way a certain song would sound.
So I think that's kind of an interesting point to there's a lot of these people who say John Bon Jovi still got it. He best rock and roller of all time. It's like
Mm.
they're saying that because they have a soft spot for Bon
Yeah.
Jovi, or like I went to a Bon Jovi concert in '86 and got laid. Uh,
Yeah, it's
like
probably like nostalgia and all that.
yeah. So it's like the amount of people you have to wonder. Um,
Mm.
and I'd be very interested to see like surveyed. You have to wonder the amount of people who say stuff like that and like fully mean it versus just like, oh, it's nice to see my boy still up there, still doing it,
Yeah.
even though not knowing that or maybe there's a perception that because he's older, oh, he's just going to sound flatter. When we've seen this like talking about Mick Jagger before, it's not necessarily true. Or Peter Gabriel, to bring up a Genesis example again, it's not necessarily true.
Yeah. I I think that um I think that is usually why people would say like, "Oh, my man still got it. Oh, he's still good." And all that. It's probably cuz like yeah, they love to see their favorite musician live and they would love to see their um they probably would love to still have the opportunity to see their favorite bands live, which is fair. I would I I would love to see I'm still kicking myself for this, but I would have loved to see Rush live. I almost saw them
I would
live
too.
my senior year.
It just didn't work out for you.
Yeah, because the people I was supposed to go see the people I was supposed to go see Rush with, that those plans fell through and we never got the tickets and I didn't even know that was going to be Rush's last tour until years later.
I had a similar experience with I mean, I'm sure they probably will tour again, but with Jane's Addiction, I really wanted to see them, and they were at Stone Pony, the summer stage, and
Mhm.
I live like 40 minutes from Asbury, so it's not even. So it seemed like the perfect opportunity to go see them, and I just fell through last minute and didn't. And for those things again, I kick myself for it too because that's another really good group where they're still in good shape, and you have to wonder it's like how long is that going to last before the
Yeah.
inevitable toll of time is comes to fruition.
Yeah. I think that I think that there's definitely uh you will run into a lot of missed opportunities with um with seeing bands live. I I could honestly say that with Rush. I heard that that was one of the best the R40 tour. I heard
Hmm.
was one of the best tours that Rush ever went on. Like performance wise, they like knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, it's funny how that's usually how it goes, right?
Yeah.
um, yeah, likewise, I heard that Jane's Addiction show at Stone Pony and uh, their whole tour they did was like really good. It's like, son of a
Yeah.
bitch, why don't I go?
Yeah. And I think that I'm glad that I actually went I'm glad that I saw Iron Maiden on the tour that I did rather than the previous tour, which was the Book of Souls tour, because I went and looked at the set list for the Book of Souls tour, and I, I'm again, I don't like to rip on my favorite bands because I love them and I think they're great, but I much preferred the set list on the Legacy of the Beast tour, and I know a lot of other people that are like huge Iron Maiden fans said the same thing, that they preferred to see they preferred the Legacy of the Beast tours set list rather than the Book of Souls tour set list. Um, I'm gonna see if I could find it. The Book of Souls World Tour. There it is. Book of Souls. I'm gonna see what songs did they have on their set list. Where is it? 2016. What was their set list? Um, I'm just bear with me real quick. I'm just
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
Book of Souls tour set list. I think they had two set lists in um on their tour, which was one of them was uh well, most of them, I would assume a good portion of them were probably uh from the Book of Souls. Here we go. The Book of Souls tour had If Eternity Should Fail, Speed of Light, Children of the Damned from Number of the Beast, Tears of a Clown, The Red and the Black, The Trooper, Death or Glory, Power Slave, The Book of Souls, Hallowed Be Thy Name, Fear of the Dark, and Iron Maiden. And then they had three encore songs. They had The Number of the Beast, Blood Brothers, and Wasted Years. Okay. I'll admit, that's not a bad set list. There are some good songs on there, but it's mostly the Book of Souls, which makes sense. It was to promote the Book of Souls album.
Yeah.
And I could see why some people were turned off by it, because I know a lot of people weren't really big into the way that the Book of Souls sounded, or like the Book of Souls album sounded, which I'll admit it's not one of their best. It's probably it's a good album. It has some really good songs, like I've mentioned before, but
You're saying
it's
it's very different.
yeah, it's very different, and it's
Well,
like
too different.
what what'd you say?
So maybe a little too different
Yeah,
for some of the people who just want to hear that classic Maiden sound.
for like fans. And um the Legacy of the Beast tour, I think. Oh, I thought they never finished it. Oh, I thought they already finished it. But
COVID.
yeah, probably yeah, it's because of COVID that they never finished their tour. But Legacy of the Beast, their set list. Oh my god, their set list. Let me see if I can find it. I don't know if you're ready for this. You ready?
Yeah, give it to me.
Aces High, Where Eagles Dare, 2 minutes to midnight. The Klansman, The Trooper, Revelations, For the Greater Good of God, The Wicker Man, Sign of the Cross, Flight of Icarus, Fear of the Dark, The Number of the Beast, and Iron Maiden as their main set list. Oh, and the intro, obviously, before they play Aces High, they play Winston Churchill's famous speech.
Mm-hmm.
But their encore was The Evil That Men Do from Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, Hallowed Be Thy Name from Number of the Beast, and Run to the Hills from Number of the Beast.
It's a victory lap. That's literally what that is. That's a victory lap. But that's a cool place to be, though. Yeah, that definitely sounds a lot more up everyone's alley rather than like when I saw the Police do their last show at MSG, it was it's kind of, you could just go bonkers at that point, right? Like they opened with Message in a Bottle, but they had like the New York City Police Department band come in and like do it with them, and they covered Purple Haze.
Oh, that's cool.
I think I don't remember what else they covered. There's another one. The B-52s open for them. It's like when you're going on that victory lap, it's like, it's different than an album tour because it's like, do whatever you want, have fun with it.
Yeah, and yeah, I completely agree with that. But I don't know if you need any insight on the set list that I just named to you.
I recognize like 90% of the songs, and to me, as somebody who's not really familiar with Maiden, I think that kind of speaks a lot to. It just seems like I said, a victory lap. Like they're just not necessarily like a greatest hits tour, but just a tour where they know what people want to hear, so they're just gonna go with it.
I think and I think the Police were also very similar to that. I think they knew like how they wanted to please the fans, and I'm really glad. I actually started playing the Legacy of the Beast game because it was the tour was to promote their mobile game.
Boy.
Yeah. But honestly, I will admit that they did a damn fine job with advertising it, with having this tour and seeing like, I think it was all worth it. Like that's like a big like I love you to the fans.
Oh yeah, I mean, could you imagine if I don't know if the Police came out with some kind of crazy it was like a pay to play mobile game or something like that, and they went on a tour, like a greatest hits tour to promote it. I mean, yeah, what a gift. Yeah, that's pretty wild. So is that the whole point of the tour, or is the tour kind of what it sounds like? Like you keep using the same phrase, but like a victory lap, and they just happen to have this mobile game that's coinciding with it.
I would think so because this their set list I heard is very reminiscent of the Somewhere Back in Time tour. Because they had a lot of like big let me see if I can find it. They had a lot of their big like set list like songs. Yeah, it was almost very similar. Like both of the songs like on their set lists for Somewhere Back in Time. They had Aces High. They had 2 Minutes to Midnight, which I I will say this right now. Power Slave is my favorite Iron Maiden album of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I feel like that. I feel like that. I have a few friends that are like really, really into Maiden. And the way it hit, similar to what you're describing. Including I have an uncle that like knows their entire catalog in and out, and that's the consensus. At least from my perspective, is that that's what everyone seems to like the most.
Yeah, I I can't say I know the 100% of their entire catalog, but I do know like a good 90%, 80 or 90%, at least good enough um to see them live, because like I've been listening to Maiden ever since I was 15 years old, and I could honestly say they've been a huge impact on me musically and just in general, just in my life, because I've never been so engaged in listening to a band as I have with listening to Iron Maiden, because
I'll tell you, I have the same exact affinity for U2.
Mhm.
Uh, I really started getting into post punk when I was like 14, 15. A lot of like groups like uh, some of them came later, like television stuff like that. But like the stuff that the police was doing was a big one. Cause that final concert I'm talking about that happened when I was in sixth grade. Um, but me getting into U2 was like a game changer because it was I don't know, it just really resonated with a lot of the stuff that I was kind of experiencing at that time,
Mhm.
and I'm kind of waiting for them to go on a tour where they play all the stuff that they're really known for because I don't know, we're talking about setlist and everything, and you're saying like Iron Maiden the last album that came out, it was good, but it was it was okay. And I feel very similar to you two in that perspective. How I'm caught up on the catalog, right? But the back catalog is a lot better than the stuff they're doing now, or the one that they forced into everyone's iTunes library. Talk about that.
Yeah.
Uh, I very much I get where you're coming from with that.
Yeah. I've also I actually I'm not that familiar with U2.
So it's weird. I think for me, I like there is a big post punk phase, and that's kind of where they start. That they really go through, and then it kind of goes to this rhythm and blues thing with Rattle and Hum and Joshua Tree. That's also good. Then
Mhm.
they get to electronic stuff in the '90s, which is also pretty good. Some of it's hit or miss for me, and then I don't know. It's like by 2000, that's when you get like Beautiful Day and Vertigo and stuff, and they kind of lose me there. It's
Yeah.
not it's not like young angsty music at that point. It's I don't know. There's a point where I feel like a lot of artists, especially from that era, just get old and they start writing just music that's a lot more mellow. And I don't know. For me personally, it's like I doubt that Iron Maiden necessarily has this problem, but for you kind of lose me. It's not quite the same. It doesn't carry the same energy with it. There's a very youthful energy in a lot of these earlier albums that I'm talking about with both the Police and U2 that just
Mhm.
you kind of lose them later on.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Um, yeah, I think that that's definitely a lot to take into consideration. Uh, before I call any conclusions, do you have any other hot takes you would want to discuss?
Uh, no, that ACDC one is really one of the only ones that I was particularly interested in hearing your feedback on because I've seen tons of people arguing about that.
Mhm.
Um, Other than that, I guess I got one more. It's more of a stipulation because I belong to a group that also fights about this a lot on Facebook. Uh, is Pink Floyd a progressive rock group? Yes or no?
Uh, in my opinion, no. Like,
Okay, I also say no. But why do you say no?
I say no mostly because their genre isn't like specifically grounded under progressive rock.
Hmm.
They're like not really defined by that genre. Say, or say like Yes or Kansas, um, or even or like even Jethro Tull. I would say like they're more. I would say they're more proper. They're properly labeled progressive rock because of what they were known for. I can't really say the same about Pink Floyd.
Yeah, because even though sometimes they do mess with time signatures a little bit, and
Mhm.
there's about they got more of their own kind of like just sad rock sound going on that I think is unique to them. Um,
Yeah.
I had one other one for you really fast. Oh yeah, how much Yes are you familiar with? A lot or a little bit?
Um, I don't. I would say a little bit, mostly because I've only listened to their albums from the '70s, and it's not even all of their albums from the '70s. I would say I've their catalog that I am familiar with are probably, um, are there. That would probably be the Yes album, to Going
Mhm.
for the One.
Okay, that's good. That's I'm glad that it goes that far because most people go close to the edge and they kind of stop. Um,
Hmm.
you think there's anything after close to the edge that's good?
Going for the One had some good songs. I will
Hmm.
admit that. The Big Generator also had some good songs. I've listened to a few songs from there, but not well enough for me to say like I've really listened to this era of Yes. But
Okay.
I would say Going for the One had some good songs. I wouldn't say it's a great album or one of my favorites, but it definitely has some good songs. I love Wondrous Stories. I think that's an absolutely beautiful tune. Um,
Hmm.
Going for the One, that's the
But
title
dang
track.
it, I love that song.
And what was another one? Awaken, that's a great tune. The
Hmm.
the closing song from that.
John Anderson's favorite. Because I really tried when I was doing my deep dive in the catalog to give Tales of Topographic Oceans a try and
Mhm.
Relayer. I was like, wow, I can't actually do these. Uh, I don't know. It's the same thing. Like I have a buddy that's really into Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and he loves Tarkus. It's like I can't do it.
I
Too
love Tarkus.
for me, it's like there's a point where it's like you hit the prog threshold. Like I can't. Just I
Yeah.
don't know. It just doesn't resonate with me.
I would say with Tarkus, like you really gotta. I say, in order to really listen to, and I do this with every single like progressive rock album or song that uses that has these 20-minute, like 18 to 20-minute songs. Listen to them while you're driving, or listen to them while you're like doing homework or something, because that's how you'll really get the full experience of the song without feeling like it's dragging.
I think that's good advice too because yeah the first listen that I have for a lot of these like 18-20 minute songs really is in the car or cleaning up the house or something while listening because if I had to sit down and actively listen to these tracks, I mean, after listening the first time and kind of realizing that oh this is cool, like that ridiculous Rick Wakeman organ solo, it's like I can do it now, but if you ask me to sit down, never listening to Close to the Edge to do that,
Yeah.
I don't think there's a chance I would have lasted through that. I don't know. Tarkus is one of those ones I just I'll keep trying to listen, but it's one of those ones that just not yet. Just
Yeah.
haven't found the right moment for it yet. I guess.
That's how I was with Brain Salad Surgery by Emerson Lake and Palmer. I I could not sit and listen to Carnival Number 9 um through the whole way through without, like, I would have to either go on a walk or just drive, in order for me to really like appreciate the song for how it sounds, or
Yeah,
appreciate the songs for how they sound.
but now you can actively listen to it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird how that works. But Tarkus has definitely been one of those ones. Even while driving, it's just I don't know. It's tough.
Mhm.
It's a challenging listen for me. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I think that could be said for any progressive rock tune. Like with Relayer, I tried to listen to Relayer, I just couldn't get into it.
I couldn't do Topographic either. I know, but those albums are a bit rough.
Yeah.
Um,
The only songs I liked from Topographic were The Revealing Science of God and Ritual, which is Nous Sommes du Soleil, I think is how it's pronounced. I probably mispronounced it. But those are the two highlights of Topographic Oceans. At least I think they are. Like, that's just my opinion.
I know the songs you're talking about. I haven't listened to either one of those in a long time because I remember distinctly disliking those albums so much. Um, I remember. I think the one you're talking about. What was? I'm sorry. What were your two from Topographic again?
It was the first one and the last one. The
The
first one.
last the last one I think is the one that I was kind of like, yeah, okay, this is fine. Um, You ever listen to any stuff off Tomato?
Uh,
With
oh,
thinking, is it Tomato or Tomato? I don't know how it's pronounced. I always said Tomato, but
yeah,
I'm more than likely wrong.
that might be the UK pronunciation, I guess, or I don't know how I forgot how they pronounce tomato. I think it's tomato, but I could be wrong. I don't. I haven't spoken to an actual English person about
Been a
accent
hot minute.
differences. Yeah,
Yeah.
since I was in the UK.
Mm. I forget. Have you ever heard it's the one with it's this guy on the cover who has like a fencing sword or something, and he just has a bunch of tomatoes lopped at him.
Yeah, tomato. That came out after Going for the One, right?
I thought it was after Relayer, but it might have been after Going for the. No, it is after Going for the One because that's when they started leaping out of that like super long song phase.
Yeah.
There's a number of really good songs on that one too. There's one I really like that's supposed to tell the story of like this alien encounter, and John Anderson's son, who's like 3 years old at the time, does like a fair amount of like singing. Yeah, 3, but it's very wholesome. I like it, so it's nice.
What is it called?
I can't close the window on my phone to show you right now because that would definitely cancel out the chat we have. But I give it to you afterwards. It's definitely one of the. It's like Wondrous Travels or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like smack in the middle of the album, but for me, I always appreciated it. So the same thing. One of those ones where you're driving and it catches your ear. You're like, oh, this is neat. This is cool. I like this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out when I get the chance. Anyways, is there anything else you want to say about Yes or any of that?
Not really. I mean, nothing that really would be appropriate for this conversation right now. Anyway, I could talk for a long time about Yes.
The goddamn bacon said, I usually listen to rock when I drove, mainly because I can't download podcasts at the moment. I'm usually like that too because certain people put podcasts either on Apple Podcasts or they put them on websites in which I can't really access them at the time where I'm driving. So I completely understand.
Podcasts are a mood. If I usually do like comedy podcasts or sometimes they're more serious ones, but like BBC NewsHour or ones that are kind of more like crime drama stuff. But you have to be in the mood for that.
Yeah.
Like that's a very specific like if I do food delivery sometimes, and it's like I'm never gonna put that on during food delivery because that would just be the most that would just drag on for way too long. It's like if you're driving with like an intent and a purpose, like deliveries, like I'm saying, it's like music all the way, 100%. Don't even fret about the podcasting. In that regard, you're not missing a whole lot.
Yeah, I would definitely I usually prefer to go on podcasts whenever I'm whenever I'm at home or something like that, where I'm like going to bed. So that usually helps.
Yeah, or what's it called? I work at a gas station, so sitting in a booth, waiting for people to drive up. That's a perfect time for a podcast because it's entertaining and it gets you through. And you listen to the same playlist over and over, and it gets boring after a while.
Yeah.
Podcasts are always fresh.
Do you have anything else you want to say, or before we got our final thoughts?
No. I think let's proceed to final thoughts here. It's getting late.
So yeah, this is probably the longest podcast that I've had in general. I think for anything that I've done, because we were talking for almost 3 hours.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, my screen froze like maybe 10 minutes in, and I only refreshed it like recently, and the timer jumped from like 50 minutes to 2 hours. Like, oh my god! I had no idea that we were at it for so long.
Yeah, but it's all right. We
And
definitely had a lot to talk about, and
hmm
I again thank you for coming on. Like you were, uh, it was fun having you, and we definitely had a lot to talk about in this podcast.
oh, my friend, thank you very much for inviting me. It is an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, no problem. But um, as what I was saying is, I did. We definitely there definitely was a lot to take to consideration because there's probably even a lot more things I would love to do, like an open discussion like this about hot takes, some musical hot takes again, because I know there's a lot of other opinions out there that people will say like, oh, well, I think this band is bad, or people that dislike them, I actually like them, or I don't think it was that bad for them to change this, or just any sort of thing like that. I would love to do another open discussion.
Yeah, I got plenty of takes on that too. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would. That would be. That sounds like a very productive discussion.
Yeah. But honestly, that's how I want to end it. Guys, like, comment, share, and subscribe if you want to see videos similar to this one. Any updates regarding the podcast will be on my Instagram right here at LA Perez Works. So just stay updated on my Instagram story for anything regarding the podcast. And as tomorrow, unfortunately, Friday I will not be around to do anything, but tomorrow I should have more stuff for you. I know I haven't been as active this week, but I will work on changing that, and I will, of course, like I said, I will keep you guys updated on my Instagram down here. So just check out my Instagram at LA Perez Works, and things will be a okay. James, again, thank you for coming on to the show and discussing with me, and thank you for everyone else that came out to that just came out and added their 2 cents. Uh, um, guys, I hope you have a good rest of your night and good rest of your week as well. If I don't see you, as always, stay tuned.